One moment, he was grinding his favorite RPG. The next, he was sucked right into the screen. When his eyes fluttered open, he wasn't himself anymore. A glance in the mirror shattered his sanity. Tears streamed down his face, for he had awakened as the most tragic figure in history. Evan de Chateau, an extra character with a destiny so bleak, the universe practically wants him dead. He had spent years trying to save Evan in the game, yet failure was the only reward. Evan's death toll was legendary, crushed by beasts, choking on poison. He once slipped on a simple banana peel and met his end. Then came the heartbreak, stabbed by a maid after a messy breakup, followed by a harem of 10 furious exes seeking vengeance. His most heroic death? Shielding the protagonist from the final boss. A glorious end, perhaps, but a corpse is still a corpse. Is there a glimmer of hope in this cursed life? Can he defy fate? The burning question remains. Where does a doomed extra even start? Step 1. Become the type of background character who refuses to die. While knights sharpen their steel and magicians chant ancient incantations, Evan realizes the answer is painfully simple. Infinite leveling. When the numbers go up, magic pools deepen for sorcerers, while warriors turn into unstoppable tanks of destruction. When Mabel the maid catches wind of his muttering, she suspects our boy is suicidal enough to enter a dungeon already. Her voice thunders through the room. She scolds him with the fury of a guardian, forbidding such reckless jokes. Dungeons are death traps teeming with nightmares. As a noble scion, his fate is sealed to enter one eventually, but only once he reaches adulthood. Until then, her order is absolute. Train safely and grow up. She vows to keep him under lock and key. He quickly nods, feigning obedience to calm her raging spirit. As she exits, he smirks. He had staged that outburst intentionally, testing the waters of her loyalty. Here's the kicker: our hero has already lived inside this world for 9 years now. He understands a fatal flaw in society's logic. The masses labor under a serious misunderstanding. They believe dungeons are the sole path to power. True. Clearing those hellscapes bestows divine blessings that amplify strength. The kingdom even commanded nobles to govern these monster nests, birthing the dungeon city. A metropolis ruled by the iron fist of his father, Marquis Evan de Chateau. Dungeons grant levels, yes, but Evan possesses forbidden knowledge. Game mechanics allow growth without risking his neck. Mabel hears his whispers and tilts her head in confusion. He flashes a gentle smile, assuring her all is well. In the game, he is merely a side character, yet, paradoxically, he possesses the most lethal charm. His face falls. That smile must be banished. He knows what is coming. That very charisma is a curse. In this world, a handsome grin triggers romance flags, and romance equals death. He must remain stoic to survive. Shaking off the dread, he locks onto his mission. He has analyzed the prejudice against demons. Now, Operation Survive at All Costs begins. Phase 1. Level up like a madman. He asks Mabel for the date of his birth. Next week, he commands an audience with his father immediately. Time is of the essence. To execute his master plan, he requires a legendary heirloom, the Mirassol Necklace, the very first treasure unearthed from the Sheridan dungeon, a relic passed down through their bloodline. In the original game, obtaining this artifact required forming a soul pact with Evan, but there is a catch. A specific, catastrophic event is tied to its awakening. He remembers it all too well. When he tried to activate the necklace with mana, chaos erupted. The spell went horribly wrong. A portal tore open, vomiting thousands of slimes. Weak, level 1 blobs, sure, but an endless tide of them. He was helpless to stop the flood, fighting in vain until the image of Evan drowning in a sea of gelatin became a legendary meme of failure in the gaming community. But amidst that tragedy, he had spotted a miracle. As the main character, he killed a single slime to save Evan, and the system pinged 1 experience point gained. The realization hits him like a lightning bolt. These summoned slimes are free experience farms. Unlike the hard-earned blessings of the dungeon, this is pure, grindable power. This world follows the absolute rules of the game. Every action yields a result. They call it gaming experience, whether clashing with beasts or swinging a wooden sword. To the inhabitants of this world, mastery comes from endless repetition of the same weary tasks. They believe they are simply honing a skill, like sharpening a blade. But they are fundamentally mistaken. The truth is far more profound. They aren't just improving skills. They are leveling up their very existence. When Evan de Chateau played this world as a game, he spotted this hidden mechanic alongside the standard dungeon levels. He watched the stats of his existence climb higher. Our boy knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this power was real. Unlike the explosive growth of dungeon levels, existence levels rise with the pace of a tortoise, slow, steady, and relentless. It is a path often dictated by the cruelty of natural talent and the lottery of birth. However, existence levels possess one terrifying advantage. They have no level cap, infinite growth potential. His strategic trance is shattered by Mabel. She announces that the Marquis awaits, and the headmaid stands ready to escort the young master. Through his relentless grinding in the game, the protagonist has already begun to stack valuable experience points. Even with the humble title of a laborer, his frail body has begun to toughen up. But let's be real, if he entered a dungeon now, instant death. He would be cleaved in two before he could even scream. A normal laborer might hunt to gain EXP, but he is a child. The battlefield is no place for him yet. Still, his mind races. He needs prey so pathetic that even a toddler could crush them. His eyes light up. The answer is slimes. Infinite slaughter for infinite growth. Mirasol's Necklace can summon a level 1 slime for a single point of mana. A beginner character typically starts with a mana pool of 100. The math is simple and beautiful. Evan can summon 100 slimes a day. The experience yield is garbage, practically microscopic, but if he starts the grind now, it will compound into greatness. Arriving at the Marquis' office, he steels himself. He steps inside. It is time to play the role of the dutiful second son to absolute perfection. The goal? Mirasol's Necklace. He looks at his father and demands his birthday present ahead of schedule. The Marquis frowns, confused by the urgency. Evan insists, claiming he fell in love with the necklace at first sight. The father is stunned. He expected a request for a steel blade or a mystical beast, not a piece of jewelry. Realizing the boy wants the family heirloom, the shock on his face is undeniable. That is a treasure passed down through generations, the Marquis explains. I cannot simply toss it to a child. Time for the ultimate move. Evan unleashes the puppy dog eyes technique. It's a critical hit against the Marquis' defenses. The father wavers. On one hand, his son's adorable plea. On the other, a treasured artifact. Even if it lacks combat power, he rationalizes it, recalling the old legends that artifacts choose their masters. Perhaps destiny has selected the boy? The Marquis crumbles and agrees. Victory achieved. Evan launches himself into his father's arms for a celebratory hug, but the Marquis issues a stern warning. Listen well, my son. Even magical items have their limits. Rings, swords, amulets, powerful artifacts exist everywhere. But the human vessel is fragile. You can only equip 5 at once. Any more, and your body will collapse under the magical pressure. He imparts this wisdom for the future, for when Evan grows strong enough to wield true power, he adds one final condition. Since this is our legacy, you must return Mirasol's necklace to the vault once you are done. Our protagonist nods innocently. He plans to return it eventually, right after he milks every drop of experience from it. He can't farm slimes forever, after all. He promises to return it, but his mind is already elsewhere. He needs data. Without a status window to track his existence level, he is flying blind. But for now, the prize is his. Back in the safety of his room, the necklace feels heavy in his hands. He inspects it, and a dark memory assaults him. The memory of his previous life, ending in the jaws of a slime. The Evan of the game made a fatal rookie mistake. He activated the artifact without asserting dominance over it first. That loss of control led to his demise. But this is a new game. He knows the mechanics. He knows how to rule the artifact. He knows the summon limit, the danger zones, and the cursed chant that once killed him. This time, fate will bow to him. He feels the hum of magic connecting his soul to Mirasol's necklace. Mana flows from his core. Pop! A green, gelatinous blob materializes in his palm. The slime instantly turns hostile. It lunges, but our boy barely flinches. The damage is laughable, a weak poison tickle. Unless they swarm him like a tsunami, these things are nothing but free experience points. He steeled his resolve, reminding himself he was no longer the weakling of the past. His hand clamped down on the slime, squeezing with lethal intent. Game logic flashed through his mind. He knew that continuous damage wasn't just pain. It triggered a specific debuff state, the critical condition status. When an enemy enters this window, their defense drops to 0. It opens the path for an execution move. Veterans called it the final strike. The moment the slime faltered, he unleashed the finisher, crushing it instantly. After a few reps, the rhythm became second nature. 10 seconds per kill, painfully slow. If he were level 20, a single breath would incinerate these mobs. A mere tap would suffice, but he couldn't stop now. This grind was his only lifeline. Experience points would stack, power would accumulate. He swore to make this hellish training his daily ritual, but the cost was steep. His stamina and mana were draining like water from a cracked cup. His vessel was pathetic, a level 1 body in a 9-year-old child. One wrong move, and he would collapse. He knew the system's cruelty. Push too hard, and the abnormal status's penalties would kick in. Below, 50% meant chills. Drop under 30, cold sweats, and catastrophic physical failure. He calculated the risks quickly. As long as he stayed above the 30% threshold, he could keep fighting. It was a delicate balancing act, managing his life force while pushing his limits to the breaking point. Time blurred as the rhythm took over. The slimes were dying faster now. Had it happened? Did his existence level evolve? No, it shouldn't be this easy. Ascending levels in this world was a monumental task. The curse of reality. No blue status windows, no level up ding. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Had the repetition unlocked a hidden mastery? Had he met the invisible criteria for a new skill? And then, a sensation. He assumed it was a passive buff, perhaps iron grip, or a mastery born from the constant clenching of his fist. But it felt too simple. Something else was wrong. As his mana dipped, his heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Yet his physical stamina showed no signs of failure. The continuous summoning was taxing his soul, not his muscles. A theory began to form. Evan was just a side character. Did he possess naturally high vitality despite his class? Perhaps that was his hidden trait, the reason exhaustion hadn't crippled him yet. Then, a realization struck like lightning. Evan was a mage, a tank's constitution in a caster's body. The logic didn't add up. Suddenly, footsteps thundered outside. Mabel burst into the room, panic in her eyes. He quickly masked his fatigue. "Leave me," he commanded. "Return in a few hours." As the door clicked shut, he cursed the heavens. Damn those sadistic developers. But he refused to be a tragedy. He wouldn't die a dog's death in this tutorial zone. He needed a regimen, a perfect blueprint for evolution. Physical conditioning was the priority. He would combine slime grinding with modern sports science, maximum efficiency, and then, the book. Not just a diary. He would write the Bible of this world, the genesis of the game's lore. Secret histories of fallen kingdoms, shadow politics, locations of legendary artifacts, the truth behind the myths. Every hero, every villain, every NPC, he had played the game countless times. The data was burned into his brain. Knowledge was his weapon. With it, he would dodge every death flag. But a cold thought struck him. This wasn't code anymore. Reality breathes and changes. He had to track every deviation from the original script. Comparison was critical. It was the only way to foresee the apocalypse before it arrived. Paranoia became his shield. The first deadly wave might already be festering inside the mansion walls. Caution was his new religion. Every step was a dance with death. This was strictly for survival. The schedule was set. Objective: absolute physical dominance, a fusion of game logic. And his prophetic grimoire, Evan, was ready. Let the training from hell begin. Elsewhere, tension brewed in the halls. Mabel turned to the staff. "Have you noticed? The young master, he's changed. He's locked himself away," she whispered. "It's like he's become a stranger in his own room." A senior maid narrowed her eyes. "Check your emotions, Mabel. You're crossing a line. He is the master, we are the servants. Forget that hierarchy, and you invite ruin. Overstepping brings only pain." Another maid chimed in, voice hushed. "But she's right. Something is off. The prankster is gone. The chaotic young master has fallen silent, and that silence is terrifying." Since that day, the butler had noticed something peculiar in the courtyard. The young master was up to something. He described the child holding a strange martial stance. It looked almost like a secret training ritual. Hearing this, the maid chimed in. She, too, had noticed him constantly clenching and relaxing his wrists. The butler shrugged. "Perhaps it is just a childish whim," he dismissed. "The minds of children are a labyrinth adults cannot navigate." But Mabel remained anxious. She was convinced that a fundamental shift had occurred within him after his illness. The other maid tried to soothe her nerves, but the butler issued a cold warning. "Keep acting paranoid, and you will find yourself without a job." Just then, another servant burst into the dining hall, gasping for air, his face pale with shock. He reported the impossible. Their young master had just lifted a massive boulder in the garden. The butler immediately scoffed, claiming it was a hallucination. But the newcomer insisted. It wasn't a mountain, but it was definitely impossible for a child to move. And when questioned, Evan had calmly replied it was a substitute for dumbbells. The poor servant couldn't even pronounce the alien word. Hearing this, Mabel panicked and tried to rush to his side, but the head maid grabbed her arm, restraining her firmly. The butler turned to the messenger, his eyes narrowing. "Are you absolutely certain of what you saw?" The servant swore it was the truth. Mabel struggled against the grip, but the maid would not let go. Meanwhile, Evan was having an audience with his mother, Redine de Chateau. Redine, the Marquess's first wife, sat elegantly with her son, sipping tea. She scolded him gently. "What has captivated you so fully, my son? You haven't even had time to share tea with your mother lately." He explained his absence, researching ancient artifacts and physical conditioning. She understood the artifacts part immediately. He surely meant the Mirassol Necklace from his father. But physical exercise? That puzzled her. She had assumed his heart was set on the path of a powerful mage. Our hero shook his head wisely. "Mother, everyone has a path called destiny. Forcing a square peg into a round hole brings misery not just to the doer, but to the watcher, and to those pushing them. Impressed by his wisdom, Redeen granted him permission to follow his own heart, because soon, the peace would end. Next year, the chaos begins. The young noble remembered the timeline well. Nobility lessons commence at age 10. In just 1 year, he would be drowning in knowledge. History, languages, mathematics, geography, and the martial arts of swordsmanship and magic. The burden of a noble. She reminded him of his bloodline. As a member of the Sheridan Marquisate and a noble of the Dungeon City, a heavy responsibility rested on his shoulders. One day, he would assist his brother in ruling this domain. He had to be ready for war. Evan read between the lines perfectly. Adulthood meant one thing. He would be expected to enter the dungeon and face its horrors. She was shocked that he already understood the gravity of it. But of course, he knew. In the original game, that duty was his death sentence. He promised to study hard. When the year turned, he would focus. But for now, she wanted him to be a child. Enjoy your freedom, she urged. Explore the city. Even though we are still rebuilding from the recent reverse flow calamity, Evan agreed on the surface, but a fire burned in his eyes. He had already decided the grind would never stop. He would train with the slimes at every opportunity. With 1 year left, he vowed to master it and initiate the second immortality project. But for that, he needed the perfect vessel. Back in his room, he consulted his secret notes. He scanned the list of demigods from the game's Viscount storyline. The Venom Spear? No. The Blood-Eyed Witch? She was breathtaking and deadly, but finding her was impossible. Then his gaze locked onto a name, the Silent Knight, a character rivaling the strongest entities in the game. Just like our hero, he recalled the legend. The Silent Knight, a master assassin wielding twin daggers, blending into shadows to harvest monsters without a sound. But like the others, his fate was a tragedy. Evan clenched his fist. I can change his destiny. Originally from Sheridan, the boy lost his parents in a massive dungeon reverse flow at age 9, sold to foreign mercenaries. His true potential only awakened years later in the dungeon's depths. As Evan pondered the timeline, the realization struck like lightning. His mother mentioned the city was recovering from a reverse flow right now. That meant the Silent Knight, one of the game's top-tier units, was likely here in Sheridan at this very moment. Determination flared. He found Mabel and issued a command. Prepare the carriage. We are going shopping. Inside the carriage, the maid was bewildered. What could he possibly want to buy in a city filled with rubble and ruin? In the aftermath of the dungeon's chaos, he dropped a bombshell that left Mabel utterly mute. He declared his intention to purchase a human being. Their destination? The slave market. As the morning sun rose over the battered district, the grim reality of the city revealed itself. Wounded citizens limped through the debris while their carriage rattled down the marketplace road. Inside, Evan analyzed the city's tragic decline. He traced the ruin back to the dungeon reversal and the wave of monsters that had breached the surface, leaving destruction in their wake. Mabel chimed in with a grim observation. Until the walls are rebuilt, few merchants would dare return to these cursed streets. With beasts still prowling the shadows, it was hardly the time for a shopping spree. Yet, our protagonist admitted this gamble was necessary. If they missed this window, the city would soon swarm with eyes, making his future maneuvers impossible to hide. His maid voiced her sharp disapproval. Wandering outside was dangerous enough, but purchasing a slave in these times? It was madness. But the protagonist remained an ocean of calm, soothing her fears. He explained that their target was the sole sanctioned market in all of Sheridan, a facility officially recognized by the Crown. When she questioned its legitimacy, he offered a chilling confirmation. It was designed as a fortress of order and surveillance. In this world, the state itself held the leash on the slave trade. While official complaints of abuse had vanished, the darkness merely hid in the loopholes. Desperation still bred rebellion, leading victims to rise up with proof of their torment. And among these rebels stood a legendary figure from the archives of Demon War III, a crimson-haired calamity wielding apocalyptic flames, known only as the Blood Witch. He had crossed paths with her in a previous timeline, an encounter that ended with his own death. Suddenly, the carriage halted before a looming structure. Evan strode inside, flanked by his steel-clad knight and loyal maid. The knight's voice boomed, announcing their presence. Dane, introduced as the boy's shield, hesitated. He lowered his voice, offering a word of caution to his young master. This grim market was no place for one of noble blood. But the protagonist's response was sharp and unyielding. He knew exactly what kind of hell this was. He hadn't come to gawk at misery or flaunt his family's gold. He was on a hunt for essential allies. When the knight suggested letting the Marquis handle it, Evan cut him off. He remembered the bitter truth. Everyone his father chose in the past had died alongside him. With that dark memory pushing him, they moved forward. A bald merchant greeted them, shocked that a young master had come without an entourage. Evan simply replied that he needed to see the goods with his own eyes. He refused to rely on another's judgment. He demanded to see children of his own age, specifically the orphans of the recent disaster. The merchant warned that these weren't broken victims. They had hardened their hearts and sold themselves, making them poor servants for a noble. But the boy smiled. To him, that desperation meant drive and unshakable motivation. He waved away the need for any standard testing. He sought companions who could ascend to greatness by his side, guardians who would grow with him. Sensing the noble's resolve, the merchant bowed in agreement. If the young master had made his choice, there was no room for argument. Following Evan's specific criteria, he led them to a holding room where several shadows waited. The merchant noted he had already filtered out anyone under the age of 12. Evan's eyes swept across the room like a radar. His focus snapped to a boy with hair the color of the deep sea, obsidian eyes and sun-kissed skin. There was no mistake. He was looking at the future legend, the Silent Knight. His gaze shifted, locking onto a girl with hair like burning embers. A top 5 powerhouse from the game, infamous for her villainous reputation. Dane scoffed, dismissing the children as frail and worthless. But Evan rejected the knight's assessment instantly. He didn't just want one, he claimed them both. They were demigods, a mysterious anomaly unique to the era of the Demon War. A subspecies that had appeared out of nowhere, seemingly abandoned by the heavens. Cursed with frail bodies and stunted growth, society branded them as inferior. Yet, hidden within that weakness was the potential for god-slaying power, and standing right before him were the apex of that race, the Blood Witch and the Silent Knight, the living proof of their potential. In the original history, demigods shattered their limits through the fires of the dungeon. Combat was the anvil on which their strength was forged. Every level gained bestowed upon them double the blessings of a normal human. The deeper they ventured into the abyss, the more terrifying their growth became, creating a gap so vast that mere humans could never hope to bridge it. However, this power came with a cruel catch. Their initial frailty made survival nearly impossible. Most were slaughtered before they could even reach the 5th floor. A mountain of corpses was required to produce a single legend. But Evan smiled. Knowing those dark days were over, he swore a silent oath to keep them alive. Now that they served him, death would have to go through him first. The merchant interrupted, apologizing nervously. He warned that their price was suspiciously low, a mere fraction of the standard. He feared the Marquis would see it as an insult. Our boy silenced him with a glance. He had no intention of debating the value of future gods. He was taking them. Evan declared his ownership of the duo. In truth, this was all according to plan. He had already instructed the trade master to secure any child matching these specific traits, a deal the master had agreed to keep buried in the shadows. With this success, he was confident he could unearth even more hidden gems. He turned to face his new acquisitions, studying the faces that would change the world. Recalling the murderous intent they displayed in the original game, the way they fought like warriors, without a shred of hesitation, there is no time for them to mourn now. The tragic loss of their parents must be set aside. Our protagonist assures them he will not be a burden and simply asks for their names. The girl with crimson hair hesitates, wondering what his true intentions are when he asks again. She exchanges a nervous glance and introduces herself as Balua. However, she whispers that her mother used to call her Lua. He acknowledges the name with a nod, expressing his hope to grow close enough to use that affectionate nickname. The boy beside her steps forward, introducing himself as Shine. He admits this is the first time he has actually learned her name, recalling their brief, harsh encounter when he entered the slave market. Evan's eyes light up. He recognizes the name Shine instantly. It is a stark contrast to the silent, deadly knight he knew in the game concept. With the grace of a noble, he introduces himself as Evan de Chateau. He invites these future legends to walk his path, but Shine hesitates, asking permission to pose a question. His voice trembles with suspicion. Why would a noble buy defective products like them? The Marquis' son smiles enigmatically. If Shine is truly the same age as him, he should already sense the answer. Shine presses further, desperation in his voice. Did he buy them on purpose, just to mock their misery? To treat them as mere toys? Evan falls silent. His gaze shifts between the two broken souls before he speaks of the world's cruel unfairness. His words pierce the air, directed straight at Shine. The child admits he understands the harsh reality all too well. Evan recalls his own golden spoon, the fortune of being born as the second son of a powerful marquis, destined for a life of comfort and joy. He adds, how shocking it would be for orphans like them to receive such divine fortune. The words strike a nerve. Shine spits out the bitterness of his own upbringing, born into poverty, into hardship. He admits his body is frail and useless. He demands to know, what kind of blessing is this noble babbling about? The protagonist looks him dead in the eye. It is talent. An overwhelming, god-tier talent. He declares that both Shine and Balua possess it. Shine accuses him of cruel mockery, but Evan cuts him off. noting that ignoring him might preserve their pride for now, but he asks if living in denial will ever truly satisfy them. Belua questions him, her voice shaking. What talent is he referring to? Does she possess it too? Evan confirms that both of them hold the same potential, the talent to grow into absolute legends. She recalls a painful memory, her mother apologizing through tears for giving birth to a weakling like her. Shine connects with the pain. His own mother carried the same guilt, but our boy dismisses their mother's pity instantly, explaining that their true potential is simply a diamond hidden in the rough. When Shine presses, asking how a stranger could be aware of it, if even their own parents were blind to the truth, Evan reveals his own secret weapon. He claims to possess a unique gift, the talent to spot true geniuses, like the two diamonds standing before him. The girl grabs his sleeve, hope flickering in her eyes. Can she truly become stronger? And he answers with absolute conviction. She can. He explains that he can prove it, but he needs 3 years of preparation. If they follow his absolute command for that time, he will show them results beyond their wildest dreams. If they are not satisfied, they are free to walk away. He adds a final vow. As long as they stand by his side, no one will ever dare disrespect them again. Shine protests, reminding him they are mere slaves. But our boy swears upon his noble name to keep this promise. He states that if the results are real, they must pledge their eternal loyalty. Belua sees through the kindness. He is no philanthropist. He brought them here because he desires their power. Evan demands their decision. Will they trust his words? Will they bet their destiny on his hands to prove their talent? Silence falls over the room. The two recall the cold dungeon cell where iron chains bit into their ankles. The boy declared he would survive, refusing to rot and die like this. The girl shared that burning resolve. Evan asks one last time, will they entrust their fates to him? The two children sit in heavy silence, until the boy lowers his head and whispers that he wants to trust him. He remembers his mother's endless apologies for their weakness and his father's shame. Our boy makes a solemn vow. In 3 years, they will not curse their parents, they will thank them. They will be grateful and proud to be born strong and brave. The girl breaks down in tears, and the kids cling to their new savior. Suddenly, the headmaid spots them, and instantly yells for the staff, ordering the filthy children to be cleaned and searched outside immediately. Dane turns to the young master asking how he intends to use these tools. Calmly, he replies, they will serve as his personal shadows for now, but eventually they will follow him into the abyss of the dangerous dungeons. The steward questions if that is wise, recalling the doubts voiced earlier, but the young master's mind is set in stone. Dane remarks that even at this young age, he was able to persuade them with the skill of a veteran negotiator. He begins to comment on the nature of children when the noble cuts him off sharp, insisting he did not lie to them. They will definitely become monsters of strength. And in 3 years, Dane will witness the miracle too. The man bows to the logic. If the master insists, then it shall be done. He promises to send the children to his quarters, as soon as they are polished and ready. Later, Evan greets his new retainers. Shine stands in stoic silence. Finally, the boy speaks. Recalling his earlier statement about wanting something if they proved their talent, he watches them closely, asking if they truly wish to remain mere servants forever. But the young master has a different path in mind. I desire only one thing from you, he declares, his voice firm. You must become my shields. He taps his own chest for emphasis. Me. You must protect me. Shine looks baffled. But we are just children. However, our protagonist cuts through his doubt instantly. You will possess power beyond imagination, he vows. And with that overwhelming strength, you shall ensure my absolute survival. You will be my shadows, he commands. Apart from training, you never leave my side. You will stand between me and death itself. Shine's eyes narrow sharply. Is there a specific calamity you foresee? Evan smirks. Sharp kid, you hit the mark exactly. Danger is coming, Evan admits, and I cannot face it alone. The boy's mind races as the young master begins to unveil the truth. This is my personal training, a secret art revealed only to you. Suddenly, the quiet girl speaks up. I want to try. Belua, he says, his voice firm yet kind. You will not just try. You will crush monsters far more terrifying than the ones here. I have stated my terms, he continues. Now, speak your desires. The children blink, processing the weight of his offer. If you shield me, I shall grant your deepest wishes. He stands tall, embodying the pride and authority of the Marquis's second son. Name it, Evan commands. Limitless treasures? A title of high nobility? Or perhaps total freedom? Speak. At Evan's prompt, Shine's eyes burn with a new fire. Monsters, he growls. I want to slaughter every last one of them. Every single one. The young demigod's voice cracks with fury, a deep-seated hatred etched into his very bloodline from birth. Just like in the original game, his rage is an unquenchable inferno. Shine locks eyes with Evan, and the protagonist nods. Consider it done, Evan assures him solemnly. But there is a price. To wield that kind of power, you must conquer the dungeons. Shine flinches, a shadow of primal fear crossing his face. Die inside? He knows he is weak right now, but Evan's voice cuts through the hesitation like a blade, radiating confidence. Listen to my instructions perfectly, Evan commands, and death will never touch you. Shine falls silent, weighing his soul. But if this hellish path leads to vengeance, if he can avenge his kin, then he would gladly offer his life on a silver platter. Good. Evan accepts the resolve without blinking. Do as you wish. Shine nods. The pact is sealed. The young master then turns his gaze to Belaw. And you? What is your desire? In the original game's lore, she was a cataclysm. Not monster, not demon, but the Witch of Destruction, who tormented countless players without mercy. A raid boss requiring a mandatory kill quest. He looks at the tiny figure. How does this child become that nightmare? How does she become the enemy of humanity? I don't know, she whispers. I just hate the cold. I hate the hunger. I don't want to die, she admits, clutching her dress. I want to be strong, but I don't know what comes after that. Softly, Evan places a hand on her head. Her hands tremble in his warmth. He smiles gently. She is only 7 years old. It is okay to be lost, he murmurs. Ignorance is not a sin at your age. Whatever the answer is, we will find it together, one step at a time. Her eyes shine as she nods. She will search for her meaning in life. Listen up, our boy claps his hands. Special training begins now. Internally, however, he calculates the odds. Pushing them too hard now would be fatal. Demigods have a notoriously slow leveling curve compared to humans. Their stat growth is glacial. But he is prepared. He knows the secret mechanic for demigod growth that others ignore. Skills, he declares. Forget complex theory. We are grinding skill proficiency, starting immediately. Mastery equals power, he explains. Some skills grant instant buffs to your body the moment you unlock them. Mana capacity, stamina, raw strength, all amplified instantly. We call these passive skills. They rewrite your potential permanently. Just like the Shurden Knight's legendary vision mastery. It didn't just polish their blade work. It fundamentally evolved their physical bodies into weapons. This hellish weight training, it is the seed of a divine skill. Intrigue sparks in the children's eyes. They lean in close. Can we truly become strong? They ask. There are infinite paths, Evan grins, but we will exploit 2 specific methods. Method 1, repetition. Grind until the world acknowledges your strength. Method 2, the secret arts. Inheriting the vision of a clan over decades, he raises 2 fingers. We are going to use both. Why were servants in the Great Demon War so overpowered? Because they inherited the secret arts of noble houses. A vision elevates a mere servant to a warrior. He pauses for effect. And the mightier the family, the deadlier the skill. The children hang on his every word. And you two, he whispers, are sitting on a gold mine. The Shurden Marquisati possesses the most ancient, unrivaled secret arts in the entire kingdom. The pair hesitated, their eyes filled with doubt about grasping such power. Evan, however, offered a sobering truth. Yes, it was possible, but the road to mastery would be paved with thorns. Unlike the average servant born with sturdy bones, their bodies were frail. This weakness would act as a heavy shackle, dragging down the speed of their growth. To simply stand on the same ground as ordinary men, they would need to pour out 10 times the blood and sweat. Yet, if they could endure this hellish training, they would forge a golden foundation of stamina and mana capacity that no ordinary person could match. It was the ultimate path to unlocking their true potential and conquering even the deadliest of dungeons in the future. But Evan made one thing crystal clear. He could open the door, but they were the ones who had to walk through the fire. When the question fell upon Belua, of whether they possessed the resolve to march forward, Evan didn't hesitate. Their eyes held trust and sincerity, and for him, that was everything. With steel in their hearts, they bowed. The young master gazed down at his future shields, asking if their legs still held strength. The boy declared his readiness, and the girl silently agreed. Satisfied, Evan clapped his hands, and like a phantom, the blonde maid materialized. Her expression screamed annoyance, clearly expecting another childish tantrum. But our protagonist simply raised his voice with command. He cut off her complaints before they began. This wasn't a whine. It was a directive. He pointed to the trembling duo and spoke. "Teach them yourself." The words left the maid stunned. She blinked, wondering if she had heard her young master correctly. Evan's gaze turned serious. These weren't just random orphans. Their potential was the key to his survival. They were destined to be his eternal swords and shields. Yes, they were fragile now, but their talent was a diamond in the rough, waiting for her polish. Sensing his conviction, she relented. She would take the girl under her wing. But for the boy, he would face the hellish training of the head butler. It was the perfect division of labor. Shine, naive to his fate, timidly asked just what sort of man this head butler was. But the answer arrived in flesh and blood. A towering figure emerged from the shadows, his voice booming toward the young master. Evan's mind raced. To secure the butler's help, he needed to deploy his ultimate weapon. He had to act impossibly cute, swallow his pride, destroy his dignity. With the sweetest voice he could muster, he chirped, "I have a favor to ask." Meanwhile, Shine's mind drifted into a nightmare. Flames licking the sky, screams tearing through the night, someone begging him to run. The vow of vengeance burned in his soul. He would kill every monster. Suddenly, a thunderous roar shattered his memory. "Wake up!" The butler loomed over him like a demon instructor, barking orders. "Do not show me weakness." It had only been a few hours, yet Shine was crumbling. The butler sneered. At this pathetic pace, the boy wouldn't survive a single day. He wasn't fit to serve the glorious Marquis household. The butler sprinted ahead, a blur of motion, reminding the child that stamina was the root of all power. A true servant of House Chardon must be an iron wall for his master. And the torture wasn't over. Theory lessons awaited them in the afternoon. 10-minute break, the butler announced. Watching the boy gasp for air, a small smile played on the old man's lips. Watching a sapling grow was truly entertaining. Evan stepped into the training grounds. He agreed the boy's body was frail, but his mind? It was sharp. Excellent judgment and instincts far beyond his years. A razor-sharp intellect combined with the indomitable will to see his mission through to the bitter end. "Push him to the brink," Evan commanded. "I have enough healing artifacts to fix him if he breaks." Just then, a maid interrupted their scheming. "The Marquis requests your presence." Evan nodded and headed for the lion's den. Inside the grand study, his father looked at him with concern. "You haven't been playing," the Marquis noted. Evan offered a half-truth. He had been obsessively studying the mysteries of his necklace artifact. The Marquis sighed, advising caution. "Power comes with a price, my son. Do not injure yourself." Then, the Marquis dropped a bombshell. That artifact is a growth type. It was a living treasure that evolved alongside its master, unlocking god-tier abilities, but only if specific conditions were met. The Marquis admitted even he hadn't realized its true value until the artifact chose Evan as its master. "Look closely." He pointed to the heart of the jewel. "Do you see that emerald light pulsing within? When that light consumes the entire gem, the artifact will ascend to the next level." The process had already begun. It wouldn't be long now. Evan's mind flashed back to his previous life. In the game, this necklace was considered trash loot that no one equipped. He had dismissed it as useless, but now, a terrifying thought struck him. If the artifact leveled up, would the slimes in the dungeon level up too? Panic seized his heart. If the slimes became monsters he couldn't crush with his bare hands, he was doomed. Imagine the humiliation dying to a slime. Yet, he couldn't halt his grind. He shook his head, dismissing the fear. A slime is a slime. Even a high-level slime is just a bouncy bag of exp. The business talk ended, and the Marquis turned to personal matters. "You spent your entire fortune on those 2 orphans. Was it mere pity? Not pity, father. Investment." Evan's eyes shone with absolute certainty. "They will become the strongest shields to protect my life." The Marquis studied his son's face. Seeing the resolve there, he nodded slowly. "Very well. If your conviction is that deep, I will trust your judgment." However, his voice turned stern. "Their fate is now in your hands alone." Evan accepted the weight of that duty without flinching. "They are already my people," Evan declared. Time flowed like a river. 3 months passed, and Shine now stood tall, donning the uniform of a true servant. As he stood before the young master while Belois adjusted her maid attire, Evan scrutinized them with a gamer's eye. Under the hawk-like gaze of the head butler, he noted that while they weren't flawless yet, their stamina now rivaled the veterans. The young master questioned the intensity of their hellish regime, reminding them that dungeon rookies are usually fragile. It typically takes 3 years to adapt to this level, yet these 2 monsters reached that peak in mere 3 months. With a voice of absolute authority, he declared that any failure would be his burden alone and not a stain on their honor. The girl insisted her effort was voluntary, while the butler proposed slashing their training schedule in half. The rest of their day belonged to the young master. Evan agreed, revealing that keeping them close was his strategy from day one. He hinted at a grander scheme in the works, causing the butler to pledge his life to the preparation. A massive chest was hauled forward, and the noble unveiled a decorated tome, calling it a cheat code. Only he understood. Upon opening the loot cache, he selected the first weapons of destiny, twin daggers for Shine, and a mystic lamp for Belois. Shine clutched the golden blades, while his partner cradled the artifact. Evan revealed these were ancient artifacts rather than mere tools, recalling how players ignored them as trash in the original game. But knowing their broken potential, he launched into action, spinning in lethal arcs as the daggers sliced the wind itself. A tree trunk shattered under the pressure, asking if Shine captured the image. The boy nodded with burning eagerness. Recognizing the ultimate shortcut to mastery, Evan began his lecture on the secret technique. It was the legendary beehive felling. Starting with a defensive cross, the young master displayed the perfect form. Guarding, bending, and flowing downward, he emphasized the godlike timing required for this move. Canceling the motion halfway to erase the cooldown, Shine mirrored the move instantly. The protagonist explained that cutting the action mid-command allowed for infinite repetition without delay. Evan demanded blind faith, and Shine responded with steel, matching the rhythm as he drilled the sequence without pause, until his footwork became a blur, and the arcs snapped with lethal precision, grasping the essence of twin daggers in a single 24 hours. Meanwhile, Belos trained in the shadows with her gift. As Evan analyzed the Mystic Lamp's stats, it was the key to grinding mana capacity, control through endless activation, a hidden feature of the item. Since control is the heart of a mage's power, constant use of the artifact was the ultimate training method. It boosted spell, speed, force, and even recovery rates simultaneously, acting as a universal buff. Total capacity would skyrocket, and every activation permanently buffed her fire affinity stats. With zero limits on growth, her flames would eventually rival Hellfire itself, purely through familiarity. It was the ultimate cheat item for her. She activated it, determined not to lose to Shine's progress. But Redine crashed the party, questioning the mysterious light. Belloa hurriedly greeted Madame Redine. She noted it was a dangerous antique from the vault, suddenly realizing this was the child Evan had adopted. Wondering if her son was the culprit, the girl confirmed his guidance for mana control. Redine sighed, realizing her boy gave a complex artifact to a novice purely to teach the basics. Assuming he didn't understand magic, Bellois defended his honor instantly, claiming he was a genius. So Redine offered her personal tutelage, dubbed the Witch Training, but swore her to secrecy from Evan. Phase 2 of the Hell Training proceeded smoothly. Bellois spammed the lamp, skyrocketing her mana control. Shine refined his twin dagger arts, perfecting the high-level animation cancel of the Beehive Feller technique. During these grueling months, the protagonist dual-summoned slimes, multitasking like a pro. Proving he could control 2 summons at once, he fingered Mirassol's necklace around his neck. He planned to unequip it later, only to realize it was a broken, growth-type artifact. The slimes evolved with him, becoming tanky nightmares that granted massive experience, though they were harder to kill. Realizing items weren't enough, he needed a permanent skill, and thus began immortality. Project number 3. While dual-wielding slime summons, Evan initiated the Myriad Poison Immunity Protocol. He would consume toxins until death, by poison became impossible, a true tank's mindset. But the price tag was astronomical, as the rare poisons he needed cost a fortune. Without the head butler's signature, the treasury was locked tight, but Mabel was listening in the shadows. Evan shuts down her servant fantasy instantly, and proposes a partnership instead. Mabel tilts her head in confusion, but he grins, revealing his master plan to build a business empire. Suddenly, Big Brother Eric bursts onto the scene asking what the little lord desires. Evan doesn't waste a second bringing up the prestigious city inspection duty entrusted to Eric. It is the rite of passage where the Sheridan heir walks the streets to learn the true weight of leadership. Our boy declares he wants to help, and Eric agrees, pulling out a document. Evan slides his own notes across the table. Eric scans the papers, wondering if a spy wrote them, but our genius protagonist reveals he analyzed the data himself. Eric is floored, admitting the accuracy is terrifying, as the document logs every major event in the city. A complete dossier of the last 6 months, pairing every incident with its cause, consequence, and economic impact. It even predicts supply and demand for new recipes using common ingredients. Evan explains this is his weapon, to launch a startup, earn his own gold, and master the city's secrets. Eric insists they take this directly to their father. Seeking approval from the top, the Marquis reviews the blueprint but quickly shakes his head. He argues the scope is too massive for a child's hobby, and warns that Evan will crumble under the weight. But Evan counters perfectly, stating he will only manage the medicine sector while the Marquis handles the rest. Reading between the lines, the Marquis realizes this wasn't just a proposal, it was high-level intelligence. His eyes narrow suspiciously, asking if this was truly his son's intent, all along while Evan plays the innocent card. Insisting it was just to show resolve, the Marquis glances at Eric, wondering if this monster is really his flesh and blood. And Eric shoots back a look that says he was about to ask if this genius is truly his brother. Evan slams the papers on the desk, declaring that a war council with the vassals is mandatory. The Marquis accepts the challenge, agreeing it is time to take Evan's shadow business into the light. When the vassals assemble, some argue that the project needs a heavyweight name to succeed, while others are mesmerized, insisting the potential profits alone are worth the risk, until one man speaks up. Asking why Evan chose the medicine trade when it offers the lowest profit margins, the Marquis steps in, recalling his son's brilliant insight that the market is stagnant because the temple monopolizes healing. Our boy stands tall, declaring that medicine is the first duty to the people, pointing out the temple's greed. They refuse to heal without divine power, ensuring that donations flow exclusively into their pockets. Only dungeon divers and the filthy rich get saved while the commoners rot. Evan argues that alchemy is the revolution. In emergencies, a stable supply of minor healing potions could change everything. They can be sold cheap and slash the death rate in the slums. With eyes burning with resolve, he vows to proceed. The Marquis slams his fist down, pledging his own name to the cause and declaring that, with his backing, the Holy Temple won't dare to lift a finger. Evan hesitates, asking if it is truly safe to provoke them, since the temple holds state power, but his father laughs in the face of danger, promising to negotiate personally. Even if he has to drag the Emperor into it for the sake of the citizens, he authorizes the massive expansion. The creation of new items and the founding of a pharmacy. Evan bows respectfully like a good son. But inside, he is cackling because his true goal is to hoard every poison and herb to build absolute immunity. Until his body is indestructible, the moment the Marquis signs the paper, construction begins. The building rises in record time, but the shelves are empty because no pharmacist dares to work here. The temple's influence is everywhere, infuriating Evan as he remembers the game mechanics of Demon War 3, where their holy monopoly made dungeons deadlier and potion crafting a nightmare for players, forcing the hero to either recruit a rare alchemist or master the craft alone, so he decides to brew the potions himself. But he realizes a fatal flaw: who would trust medicine made by a 9-year-old until a scheme forms? He will pose as an apprentice under a figurehead pharmacist while pulling the strings from the shadows, leveraging a cheat code recipe from the game to pass off as a revolutionary discovery. Just then, Shine enters. Evan demands a status report, immediately asking if the puppet has been found, but Shine shakes his head. Instead, he found a legendary headhunter. A bald man enters with a stack of resumes, and our protagonist recognizes him instantly. The slave market master babbled on about ordinary apothecaries, but Evan wasn't looking for copper. He was hunting for diamonds. Scanning the list, his eyes locked onto a single name: Bernard Garcia, age 63, the legend himself. "Bring this man to me," Evan commanded. 4 days later, Shine escorted the target in. The old man introduced himself with the blunt arrogance of a hidden master. Beside him stood his assistant, a maid named Hannah. But when Bernard spoke down to them, Shine's aura flared. "Watch your tongue before the young master," Shine warned. But the old alchemist just scoffed until Evan intervened. "It is fine," Evan smiled, looking the old man dead in the eye. "Hello, Grandpa Bernard." He dismissed the slave trader with a hush order about demigods, leaving the room silent. As Evan sent the broker away, Bernard studied the boy. Was this truly just a child? "I am just a kid," Evan smirked at the confusion. The room erupted in laughter, but Bernard remained serious. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Evan's expression shifted. Helping was one thing, loyalty was another. "I know alchemy that defies your understanding," Evan dropped the bait. "And if you think I am lying, there will be consequences." Unfazed by the glare, Evan proposed a wager, a duel of knowledge. If Evan showed him a new technique, Bernard would serve him for 5 years. If Evan failed, he becomes the apprentice. With all his secrets on the table, Evan accepted the challenge. Confidence radiated from him like the sun. They rode to the brothers' pharmacy, a grand building that would soon be the stage for their revolution. Inside, Bernard demanded to see this miracle immediately. Evan led them to the sanctum, the production room. Rows of vibrant purple plants glowed in incubation tanks. Evan pointed to the strange liquid. "Behold, the cheating potion," Evan declared. "A method of mass production that broke the laws of nature. A secret technique from the lore of Demon War 4. "Did you know of this?" Evan asked. The old man froze. I did not," Bernard stammered. Hannah echoed the name in shock. Their worldviews were shattering. Evan explained the limits: rare herbs needed fresh deposits, but the implication was clear. Infinite mass production was possible. Bernard laughed bitterly. He thought he had seen the peak of alchemy. And here, a child had just opened a new door. "My final years will not be boring after all," he grinned. "Excellent." Evan smiled like a devil, sliding a paper forward. "Sign here. For 50 years. Not 5. Caught in the trap of his own curiosity, the old legend picked up the quill. His fate was sealed. With the alchemist secured, Evan returned to his true mission, updating the strategy guide for the Demon War. Later, the War Council gathered. Evan slammed his hand on the table. "Phase 1 begins now. We corner the market," he announced. "We sweep up every medicinal herb in this entire city." Bernard suggested targeting adventurers for their loot. "Brilliant," Evan agreed. "We use samples to hook the sellers." Evan pointed out the key to their empire: a budget potion. Easy to store, cheap to buy, and distributed to every corner of the city. Even with thin margins, the sheer volume would bring a tidal wave of gold. Bernard worried about competitors, but Evan scoffed. "Let them try. We have the Marquis family crest. No one touches the nobility. To keep things running, Evan assigned Hannah to be Bernard's right hand. Then, he summoned Mabel. I cannot run the shop, he explained. I need a face for this empire. Can you handle the weight of this responsibility? Mabel went silent, her eyes intensifying. I have been ready since the moment you spoke of it, she declared. Leave it to me, young master. She vowed to guard his honor with her life, promising to crush any obstacle in their path. Pleased with her burning determination, Evan gave her command over the ingredient storage. 1 week later, chaos. The brothers' pharmacy was an instant sensation. Customers flooded in like a tsunami, trading herbs for healing. Bernard's name brought the trust, but the product brought the addiction. Mabel managed the flow perfectly, buying both medicine and poison. The barter system was a stroke of genius. Suppliers lined up around the block. One warrior even laughed. This stuff kicks a priest's holy magic to the curb. The revolution had begun. No mere alchemist would dare stamp their name so brazenly within these walls. The Marquis scanned the ledger, asking if these golden numbers represented mere revenue, only to learn the shocking truth. This is pure, unadulterated profit. Even after deducting every wage and cost, the realization struck him like a thunderbolt his son had achieved the impossible. With the pharmacy's meteoric rise, the trademaster dispatched 2 more experts. Soon, every medicinal herb in the kingdom began flowing toward Dungeon City like a river. Collectors and master alchemists flocked to Sheridan from every corner of the nation, desperate for a piece of the action. This revolution birthed a terrifying concoction, the skull-marked purple poison tea. When the crowd trembled and asked if it was safe, Evan silenced them with science. It is a divine balance of medicinal herbs and lethal venom, mixed to perfection. Designed to forge an iron body, he downed the toxic sludge without flinching. Mabel panicked, warning that one more sip could be his last. But Evan's eyes gleamed with determination. I drink this precisely to defy death itself. He then offered the deadly cup to Shine. Dare to take a sip? Shine recoiled in horror, politely declining. But Beloa stepped forward, eager to prove her loyalty. The headmaid screamed, begging her to stop. Terrified, the whole household would perish by mimicking their young master. Amidst the chaos, a sudden realization struck her. It is already March. Evan's 10th birthday looms on the horizon. A shockwave went through him. Has it truly been a year since he awakened in this body? The carefree days are numbering down. Soon, the suffocating weight of noble etiquette training will consume his schedule. The era of endless grinding is ending. Shine questioned if they should simply reveal their power, but Evan shut him down instantly. He remembered the bitterness of past failures, the agony of trying everything to survive. Shine proposed entering the dungeon, but the young master refused again. Neither you, nor I, nor Beloa are ready for that hell. When the servant pressed for answers, Evan pointed to their pact. We have 2 years remaining on our blood oath. We move only when perfection is achieved. Shine argued, claiming their strength had reached new peaks. But Evan cut through his arrogance like a blade. You are still miles away from true power. In a moment of reflection, Evan confided in his loyal subordinates. You have grown into monsters over the past year. He recalled how, at first, they were merely happy to match their peers. But soon, that satisfaction turned into the pride of the elite. Shine denied the accusation, swearing he remained humble. I would never dare show arrogance. Not before my liege. Evan lowered his voice. Even the most battle-hardened soldiers meet gruesome ends within the dungeon's depths. But outside, we can still forge our destiny. Do not rush to your grave. Prepare until failure is impossible. Can you wait? Evan asked. Shine bowed in submission, agreeing to the command. Beloas pleaded for mercy on his behalf, but Shine snapped back with exasperation. She is only 8 years old. Later, Mabel arrived with a crate of emerald herbs, the weekly tribute of poison and medicine. Evan recognized it instantly. Pattern F. Excellent work. She conveyed the alchemist's worry that their manpower was critically low. A spark of inspiration hit. We shall recruit Hannah as an apprentice. Mabel smiled, praising the girl's terrifying potential. Evan inquired about the temple, and Shine revealed the truth. Our expansion in the central district has the holy ones trembling in fear. Mabel confirmed she had already briefed the Marquise on the rising tension. Then, she posed a question. Are you still obsessed with slime training? Evan chuckled darkly. I want to crush them before they can even scream, Mabel suggested, using an artifact to enhance grip strength. But Shine scoffed at the idea. Until a memory surfaced. An artifact of raw power. It should be simple to acquire. Mabel's face paled as she recalled the lore. The blood-stained fist of the Third Great Demon War? That item carries a curse of heavy conditions. As the memory unlocked, Evan foresaw the deadly event chain. A trigger activates when his bond with Shine maximizes. On a specific birthday, the boy would offer the cursed blood-stained gloves, claiming they grant power. Accepting them? a death sentence where skills vanish and monsters feast on his flesh. Refusing them, he keeps the gloves, enters the dungeon, and perishes when magic betrays him. Every path leads to a tragic bad ending. The artifact indeed grants godlike strength, but at a terrible price, it renders all weapons useless. It only awakens for the bare-handed brawler. But for Evan, it was destiny. Since he fights unarmed against slimes, this curse is his greatest blessing. With renewed fire in his eyes, he rallied his team. To the market, he steered Maybelle away from the glittering main street. Those are mere trinkets for tourists. Real dungeon explorers never hawk true treasures in common stalls. Shine looked confused, so Evan unveiled the dark reality of their world. They either wield the power themselves, sell it to the highest bidder in secret auctions, or face robbery in the back alleys. Greed rules this city, Shine gasped. Unable to believe lives were traded for a single item, Evan nodded solemnly. A single artifact can rewrite a person's entire fate. Shine puffed out his chest, declaring himself immune to such weakness. Belois chimed in, confident her class would never betray him, but Evan knew the truth. He waves away the praise with a humble smile and gratefully accepts their loyalty before setting his sights on the next target. Eyes burning with resolve, he lays out the plan. There are hidden pieces he must secure, though uncertainty lingers in the air. Finally, he points toward the horizon and reveals the dark truth of their journey. Evan raises a warning finger. He explains that desperate dungeon delvers sometimes resort to consuming the flesh of monsters, a reckless gamble against lethal poison. Outside the dungeon, balancing the toxicity with mana is a feat nearly impossible for mortals. He warns that only the authorized elite dare to feast on such taboo power, while the desperate smuggle it out in the shadows. Rumors whisper that devouring mana beasts grants immense strength, but Evan shatters that illusion, calling it nothing but a fool's hope. Shine scoffs, noting that if such power were real, their generous young master would have already served it on a silver platter. Perhaps the poison builds resistance? The maid panics, begging him to abstain, but our hero laughs and vows to never cross that line. With a smirk, he reveals their true objective. They aren't visiting the dual-blade butcher shop for a simple cut of meat. The owner glares from the shadows, eyes full of suspicion, but Evan holds his gaze, radiating an aura that demands instant attention. Time is of the essence. The butcher realizes this noble child is no ordinary customer. He knows too much. The atmosphere shifts. Admitting defeat, the man invites him in, recognizing that a figure of such stature would never step foot in this grime to trade in mere flesh. Leaning over the counter, the butcher asks if he's here to make an arrest, but the young master simply points to a dusty object. That item is the key, a treasure whose true worth remains unknown to the world. He challenges the butcher to a game of wits. If the man hands it over, Evan promises to scrub the stain from his ruined reputation, a chance at redemption. Yet the butcher scoffs, believing his honor is too far gone to be salvaged. Evan smiles, having seen this weary look 1,000 times before. He warns that the artifact will never awaken for a man who has given up. Then, he strikes at the man's heart. He speaks of a long-buried dream, the burning desire to become a chef, leaving the butcher paralyzed with shock. He dangles the ultimate prize, the kingdom's monster cook certificate. Cooperation now means a second chance at destiny. Silence stretches, heavy and suffocating, until finally, the broken man asks what the young master truly desires. Back at the mansion, the loot is displayed. Shine and Belloy stand before a rusted blade and a crimson gem, trophies from the Crimson Stir-Fry, and the Orc Bar. These were not random finds, but a calculated harvest of hidden artifacts. Yet, the items remain dormant. Shine grips the hilt, sensing a chaotic magic that refuses to yield. Belois touches the gem, feeling only a cold heat. Their master watches with a knowing glint in his eye. He understands the problem perfectly. These treasures had rejected every previous owner. Shine lifts the heavy blade, wondering if they are nothing but junk metal. Evan confirms their doubts, but pushes them to look deeper. He reveals the secret that only he knows. These are the legendary hidden artifacts of Sheetan, but they carry a fatal flaw, a bugged possession setting from the original game code. To wield the twin blood blades, one must hold the plate. To control the Jade Flame Sphere, one must grip the twin blood. A programming disaster. The developers had mixed up the ownership conditions, locking the power behind a glitch. Memories of his past life flood back. He recalls trusting the official guidebook, failing over and over again. Countless quests completed in vain. The artifact had mocked him, a cruel joke on those who followed the rules. That is why he seized them both. Evan declares that in the city of Shurden, these are the supreme weapons of this era. Belois looks at him with awe, but Shine remains skeptical. The young master commands them to switch items immediately. Trust the process. The moment the artifacts exchange hands, the air begins to tremble. Blinding light erupts from Shine's sword. Furious crimson flames engulf Balois. At last, the weapons recognize their true masters. Evan chuckles at the absurdity. It is strange that a game's glitch has become the laws of physics in this new reality. Like cooking with an ancient, flawed recipe that somehow creates a masterpiece. The quality of the mana surging now far surpasses any summon he has ever seen, but a cold thought creeps into his mind, shaking his resolve. He sees his old self, sitting before a glowing monitor, reflecting on how this breathing world was once just pixels on a screen. Is he truly alive, or is he merely a ghost haunting a simulation? Balois breaks his trance, clutching the glowing red sphere. She marvels at the complex seal unraveling. Shine swings the twin blades, the steel singing through the air. Evan realizes the truth. What he thought was a mistake might just be the world's way of balancing power. Shine notices his master's distant look. Evan shakes his head, smiling warmly. He tells them he is simply relieved to see them strong. Shine is baffled by his humility, but Balois understands. They owe him everything. As Shine bows in deep gratitude, the bond between master and servant is forged in steel and fire. Followed by Balois, who addresses him as young master. He maintains his icy composure, declaring that the time has come to begin. He places a pair of heavy gloves on the mahogany desk, revealing to Evan that he acquired them from a seedy orc pub for a king's ransom in gold. A dark memory surfaces. In the original game script, these cursed artifacts were the very catalysts for the protagonist's demise and his own. Trembling not with fear but resolve, he grips the leather tight, reflecting on his survival thus far. He owes his life to Mirassol's necklace, the cheat item that has already cheated the Reaper countless times. As he slides the gloves on, the leather mutates. A sinister purple aura erupts, surging through his meridians. Energy coalesces in his palms. The numbers tick up. 0.5. The energy spikes higher. 0.7. With a roar, he crushes the orb. A blinding flash of destruction annihilates the slime instantly. The young master stands victorious. Perfect, he thinks. Now I can incorporate slime farming into my daily grind. Suddenly, the artifact at his throat pulses with blinding light. His eyes widen as he realizes Mirassol's necklace has ascended to the next tier. He immediately resumes the slaughter, but something is wrong. The kill speed has dropped by a full second. The realization hits him like a truck. If the artifact evolved, the summoned monsters evolved with it. The difficulty just ramped up. Mere items are no longer enough. To survive this hellish world, he realizes he needs a transcendent skill. There is no other path. Mabel, he barks. The maid materializes instantly. You called, young master? Bring my tea, he orders casually, and double the lethal poison dosage. She serves the toxic brew without a flinch. He swirls the deadly liquid. One hidden requirement is already met. His poison resistance is maxed out. He downs the venom as power scorches his veins. It is time. Time to unlock the legendary art. The Devil's Attack. The ultimate finisher from the Demon War arc. A forbidden technique that obliterates weak points for an instant kill. Most players saw it as a mere finisher, but Evan knows the meta. It can wipe out enemies even at full health, if the impossible entry conditions are perfectly aligned. Mastering this is a suicide mission. His mind races, calculating the variables. Condition 1. The level gap between predator and prey. Cleared. Condition 2. Unarmed combat. Thanks to the cursed gloves classifying as armor, his strikes count as bare-handed. Condition 3. Target at 100% health, guaranteed by the summon. But the fourth condition is the nightmare. Surprise attack. The enemy must be clueless. His plan? Strike the very microsecond the pixel materializes. And finally, the user must be suffering a status debuff. The poison tea takes care of that perfectly. The theory is flawless, but the execution is a living hell. Days pass. Mabel rushes to the alchemy lab, begging Bernard for high-grade muscle relaxants. The old master brews it instantly, and relief washes over her. The estate's pharmacy is well stocked for such emergencies. Why does the young master need such potent drugs? Bernard asks. He is destroying himself, Mabel cries, her voice trembling. No food, no sleep, just infinite training. Bernard strokes his beard, grave concern clouding his eyes. It sounds like he is screaming in agony every hour, Bernard notes. Mabel whispers, how long can his body hold out? Outside his sanctuary, servants pound on the door, begging him to answer. Inside, Evan crashes to the floor, gasping for air. His mind drifts back to a few days ago. Mabel had handed him a potion, confused. Kicking? Master? Exactly. Evan had grinned like a maniac. Devil's Attack triggers by canceling a basic motion mid-frame. I have to force the system to skip to the impact. It is just like Shine's double dagger cancel technique. The trick, he explained, eyes burning with obsession, is layering the input commands perfectly. A kick is the optimal starter. It leaves my hands free to grapple the slime instantly. But timing the summon trigger while charging the kick? It is frame-perfect insanity, Evan sighed. Doing this with a keyboard was easy. Doing it with actual muscles is a nightmare. Mabel just stared, utterly lost. I do not understand, but I pray for your success, she bowed. Go, he said softly. I need total focus. She hesitated to leave him, but he insisted. Snap back to the present. The pounding on the door grows louder. Young master, show yourself. Shut up, the protagonist thinks. I cannot stop now. I cannot compromise. I will master this before my 10th birthday. I refuse to die as a nameless extra in this game world. A primal scream tears from his throat. Meanwhile, Shine slams his fist onto the table. That is enough. I cannot listen to this torture anymore. I do not know how powerful this devil's attack is, he shouts, terrifyingly pale. But at this rate, the young master will destroy himself. Balua spoke with ice-cold calm, assuring him that if Master Evan truly desired it, he would move the heavens to achieve it alone. Meanwhile, Mabel sprinted down the corridor, clutching a box of potions, only to skid to a halt outside the sealed chamber. The usual chaotic noises had vanished, replaced by a terrifying silence. Mabel pounded on the door, and soon Redding and the Marquis rushed to the scene. They called out his name repeatedly. When the Marquis demanded the key, she wept, explaining the magical seal responded only to Evan's will from within. Redine clutched her chest, recalling the significance of this day. Did you succeed, my son? She cried, reminding him of the celebration awaiting him. At last, heavy footsteps echoed from the darkness. The lock clicked, the door swung open, and Evan stepped out to face them. Redine rushed forward with open arms. Happy 10th birthday, she sobbed warmly, while the gathered servants watched with bated breath. Even Shine and Belua gasped in shock at his appearance. Eric scrambled closer, his voice trembling with worry. Brother, are you really okay? Evan paused, offering a stoic nod to calm their fears. I am fine, he vowed, promising to remain that way. Turning to the Marquis, he made his request not for toys, but for a specific artifact from the treasury. It was his birthday gift, and a fitting reward for the pharmacy's massive success. The scene shifted as destiny began to turn. A modest building housed the next piece of his survival puzzle, a display case holding a pair of crystal-like earrings shimmering with power. Later, the elderly instructor beamed with delight, praising Evan's lightning-fast understanding. But our boy admitted the bitter truth, it was still a struggle. Despite inheriting Yeobunmin's memories, he reflected that in other web novels, reincarnated characters become instant geniuses. But for him, every simple lesson felt like a battlefield. Guided by his teacher, he tackled the endless lists of noble family trees. He mapped out foreign relations and the intricate web of aristocratic ties, knowing well that one slip-up in etiquette could trigger a death flag. Memories of the game Yo Ma Great War III flooded his mind, reminding him of the countless grim endings awaiting him. So many were tied to foreign nobles. Desperate, he even considered scarring his own face to avoid attention. Though Mabel screamed in protest at the mere thought, Shine asked if he was certain about his choice. Just the earrings, master? But Evan insisted. These were the keys to his survival. Grateful for his birth family's support, he equipped the Snow Mountain Spirit Earrings, a legendary artifact that accelerated mana recovery. With the gear secured, he prepared for the next stage. His training sessions stretched from hours into grueling days. Shine pointed out that he was old enough to begin weapon practice, but Evan shook his head, explaining his dilemma. I haven't found a weapon that suits me, he said. And with these gloves, one hand is useless for a sword. Belua argued that raw strength was essential for surviving the dungeons, but he countered with cold, noble logic. Efficiency is key. He decided to master hand-to-hand combat until the perfect weapon appeared to him. He suspected his path lay elsewhere, perhaps a unique class. He resolved to try everything he encountered, aiming to decide his fate within 2 years. While he watched the night fall, Captain Michael D. Airlock of the Shireen Marquisate observed the training grounds. He was the leader of the Iron Wall Knights, sworn to protect the family. Evan approached him, heart pounding in his chest. He remembered that in the game, the captain was just a minor character, but in reality, the man's aura was absolutely intimidating. He recalled the script. Michael would die, protecting the Marquis' family, when the Demon King's 4 divas finally invaded. A tragic event that would force the Knight, the Marquis, and Evan himself to perish together in the family's ruin. But then, training began. The protagonist arrived for combat practice, only to be shocked when the captain said, I am here for the same purpose. Evan reacted with pure confusion. Sir? Suddenly, Michael ripped off his shirt and declared his intent. I will be personally training you in combat from now on. He praised the boy for prioritizing fighting skills above all else, and admitted he was surprised it was Evan. Panicked, the youth tried to backpedal. Wait, There has been a huge misunderstanding. But the knight insisted. I am the best teacher in the city. Perhaps the entire nation. He refused to be swayed by excuses. When Evan hesitated, pointing out the captain's busy schedule, Michael brushed it aside. My student is more important than anything else. Let's start with the basics, he grinned, stepping closer while the protagonist desperately tried to retreat. After a month of hellish training, Evan collapsed under the shade of a tree. Shine joined him, while Belua approached with a cloth to wipe his sweat. He accepted it gratefully. Shine muttered, "Don't I get one?" But Belua's attention remained locked solely on Evan. Nearby, Michael dropped a bombshell. I will be absent starting tomorrow. I must clear dungeons for the upcoming backlash. He instructed Evan to train alone. In the meantime, our protagonist blinked in surprise. He recalled that the knight usually avoided dungeon crawls in the original story, but Michael explained, watching your growth inspired a fire in me. He admitted he still burned with the desire to improve. Even at his age, the boy smiled. That is a good thing. Greater strength helps both in learning and in protecting the Marquis family. As they talked, the captain described the process, avoiding traps, finding the right path, and slaughtering monsters. Evan tilted his head. Isn't that simply another kind of effort? Michael laughed, clarifying that leveling up in a dungeon was a completely different beast. The young master strikes a dramatic pose and declares that dungeon loot is basically a paycheck. It is the salary for blood, sweat, and tears. He compares it to muscle training where dancing with death leads to leveling up. Heaven itself doesn't care about the clock. The gods only judge your grind set. Whether lifting weights or slaying monsters, the math is the same. Input equals output. He concludes that high risk equals high reward and asks, "Do you smell what I'm cooking, Captain?" Michael tears up, totally buying the nonsense. He feels like a fool for ever doubting the holy grind. If it's God's will, it must be true. The knight vows eternal loyalty, but our boy just begs for a nap. But when he returns, Michael shouts, "Rest is for the weak. I will train you until your bones break." Back in his room, Evan facepalms. This is exactly the opposite of the lazy life he wanted. The captain goes berserk, ordering everyone to raid dungeons like maniacs and double their training. Even his best friend gets swept up in the madness, shouting, "We can't let the captain outwork us. Pain is weakness leaving the body." Meanwhile, our poor protagonist is drowning in slime lectures and combat drills. Several days later on a Friday afternoon, the bald merchant arrives while the knight is out farming mobs. The trademaster flashes a greedy smile. "I brought the special merchandise we discussed." The boy introduces himself as Paul, and the girl whispers, "I am Mary." Evan raises an eyebrow. Did they change their names to avoid copyright strikes? He tells the maid, "Scrub them down, and take them to their rooms." But he quickly panics. "Wait, not like that. I'm not a creep." He frantically explains that Paul and Mary are literal demigods. "It's an investment, I swear." The merchant just grins, calls it stonks, and hands over the dossier on the other targets. Evan had ordered a background check on the main cast of the Demon Wars saga, but finding them is harder than pulling an SSR unit. He knows most heroes are still noobs right now, and the protagonist of Demon War 3? That guy is a total ghost with zero paper trail. Whatever, I'll grind anyway. When Shine asks if he's satisfied, Evan just shrugs. It is what it is. He scans the list of names, resolving to carry these future heroes until they can stand on their own. Someone has to save the world. Shine looks at him with sparkles in his eyes. "Are you going to the front lines?" Evan shakes his head violently. "Me? A tank? No way. I am merely a background character. I'll throw potions from the safety of the sidelines. I'm strictly support class." But suddenly, Belois ruins the moment. "Master, it's school time." Evan screams, "No!" Later, the old alchemist calls him out, while Evan aggressively crunches on shaved ice. Bernard finally snaps. "Kid, is the pharmacy on fire? Why have you been ignoring the obvious?" Our boy looks confused. "Huh?" Bernard sighs. "The uniforms, you dimwit. It's summer. My employees are melting in these winter clothes. Have some mercy on their poor souls." He argues that fashion must match the season. "I am the potion god, and I demand breathable fabric." Evan shoots back. "Well, I can't do everything. You're the manager. Act like it." Just then, Hannah arrives with more desserts. Evan asks, "Be honest, are you roasting in that outfit?" She smiles like an angel and says she's fine. But Evan notices the sweat. "Liar, you're dying of heat." He apologizes profusely and promises to order summer skins immediately. Hannah beams. "Thank you, master. Just let me know if you need anything." Watching this, Bernard clutches his chest. "My heart, you actually care about your staff? I am moved. I must repay this virtue." Evan blinks. "You serious?" The alchemist nods. "I have the brain of a genius, but the body of a potato. However, I can teach you the ultimate forbidden arts. Alchemy is easy. Bernard points a finger. Show up every day, and I'll make you a legend. Don't be late. But while they bond, a shadowy figure lurks in a dark hallway elsewhere. A nun whispers to the bishop, Your Holiness, that new Brothers Pharmacy is stealing our customers. The bishop's face twists into a demon mask. He smashes his throne. Those heathens are killing my prophets. Fury blazed in his eyes as he roared against their mockery, declaring that he would never let such underhanded tricks disgrace the will of the gods, or go unpunished. Just as the class ended, Hannah peeked nervously into the training room, asking if Evan's hellish lesson was finally over, only to watch him crash to the floor like a puppet, with cut strings. Bernard looked down at his disciple, remarking that, if he were not so swamped with work, he could teach him all day. The protagonist groaned, joking that at this pace it would take 50 years to learn anything, before insisting he had urgent matters to attend to. He scrambled out the door, leaving Bernard to muse in the silence. That the boy was a monster who could surpass him in just 5 years. The alchemist noted with a smirk that his disciple was growing terrifyingly strong, while also mastering the art of instruction. Bernard wondered if it might be too early to start the advanced potion lessons. In the shop, Hannah explained her presence, saying the flow of customers had dried up. She added with a frown that the temple had been hosting a suspicious free blessing event for several days. Meanwhile, at the temple, a nun reported nervously to the bishop that foot traffic to Brothers Pharmacy had plummeted. He smirked, declaring that the natural order was returning, but she warned him it was only the calm before the storm, questioning if it was wise to make such powerful enemies over something so reckless. But he scoffed, replying that this had nothing to do with morality. The bishop ranted that his coffers, the donations, had been shrinking ever since that cursed pharmacy opened. He blamed the count's family for stealing away both commoners and explorers alike, claiming his crusade was solely to restore the tarnished authority of the mother goddess. He refused to back down. The nun warned him strictly not to interfere with the pharmacy directly, as it was tethered to the count's power, which could trigger a national crisis. He waved his hand dismissively, deciding he would simply avoid touching the count's bloodline directly. When she protested that the pharmacy workers were innocent civilians, he brushed her aside again, insisting with a cold sneer that he never intended to kill them. Outraged, she screamed that she could no longer stomach his corruption. Later, the nun sat alone in a tavern, drowning her sorrows, venting about the bishop's pathetic excuse of authority when all he truly craved was gold. She complained that the free blessing scheme was a hollow sham, and grumbled that the lower priests were the ones breaking their backs for his greed. Suddenly, from nearby, our protagonist commented that she seemed to really enjoy those meat skewers, and offered to foot the bill. Shocked that he knew her true identity as priestess Servina Boleyn, she drank even harder, cursing the bishop's name. Servina grumbled through her drunken haze about the rot within the priesthood, wondering aloud if she should just abandon the holy order entirely and become a free priestess under the protection of the count's family. Evan turned to her with a knowing smile and offered her that very position, a place as a priestess affiliated with him, promising unlimited resources. Servina hesitated, admitting the offer was tempting but ultimately refused. When he asked for the reason, she explained that she had made a solemn vow to herself to purify the temple from within. Evan replied coldly that the rot was too deep, and there was nothing she could do to change it. Now, Servina slumped in defeat, conceding that she had already angered the bishop enough to be on the brink of excommunication. Evan realized her fate was sealed because she had been here with him since the moment she was cast out of the main body. He considered letting destiny take its course, but then thought that, just as he had rewritten the tragic futures of Shine and Bella, he might also act as the architect of her salvation. Calling out to her, he asked, why not borrow someone else's strength if she lacked the power to change things alone? Looking confused, she wondered what kind of riddle he was spinning, and he explained that they should discuss the root of the problem and exactly how they were going to crush it together. Evan stood beside Dane, addressing the gathered employees, warning them that the shadows were moving and an ambush was possible, but reassuring everyone that they stood under an iron shield of protection. He reminded them that since they were invited guests of this city, their safety was the solemn responsibility of the host. Dane affirmed that every worker of Brothers Pharmacy represented the face of the Marquis family, and any scratch on them was a declaration of war against the family itself. An employee asked, trembling, who would dare such a foolish thing. Evan replied that the enemy was obvious, declaring that the Order of the Great's bishop was plotting their downfall. Some whispered, asking if the bishop had gone mad to target a marquis, while others realized with a chill that their connection to the nobility was exactly why they had become targets. One worker connected the dots to the free blessings, realizing it was a calculated move to bankrupt them. Our boy dismissed the logic, saying the motive was irrelevant because they already had a devastating countermeasure locked and loaded. In response, Bernard stepped forward, explaining that many apprentices had been brewing potions with leftover herbs, but the quality was trash, at least by his legendary standards, and unfit for sale. He suggested donating them to the slums for emergency aid, vowing to personally inspect every vial for safety, and warning that any fool who brewed poison would be banned from the herb room forever. The employees cheered at the benevolent plan, but the alchemist waved them down, saying this wasn't for glory, and would only last until the leftover stock was gone, addressing the true danger lurking in the dark. Evan pointed out that sending workers outside the pharmacy gave the temple the perfect opening to strike. Bernard countered with a grin, that they would use that very opening to expose the temple's weakness. Our boy agreed, but stressed that they must tread carefully into the lion's den. There was no escaping the truth now. He slammed the scrolls onto the table, unveiling secrets from a shadow informant. It contained the dark secrets of the temple, including a hit list of knights preparing for a bloodbath, and he commanded his team to watch them like hawks. Their orders were clear: take the traitors alive. He signaled Dane to brief the squad before unleashing the operation. Later, Evan stepped into the light, proclaiming a new era of free blessings and elixirs, declaring that fortune had finally smiled upon Shurton. Deep in the slums, a pharmacy worker bellowed at the top of his lungs, rallying the desperate masses to form a line for their salvation. Hope returned to their eyes as they drank the potions, parents eagerly sharing the miracle cure with their starving children while Dane watched on. He marveled at the sheer volume of stockpiled elixirs, realizing with shock that there was enough here to heal the entire district. An elderly woman grasped the young master's hands, tears in her eyes as the crushing pain in her chest vanished like a bad dream. As they patrolled, Dane observed the crowd's adoration, noting that true leadership naturally magnetized the hearts of the people. The knight assured him all was well, but suddenly, a frantic report shattered the peace through his earpiece. A thief had been intercepted, caught red-handed raiding the pharmacy. The intruder was pinned down by guards, but the warning came too late. Other shops were already under siege. Dane's expression darkened as the emergency command came through to mobilize. The enemy had launched their total assault. Evan analyzed the battlefield instantly. Destroying property was meaningless, and he predicted the enemy would target human lives to inflict real damage. Their goal was to slaughter his allies. His eyes narrowed as he asked Dane if he could feel the killing intent in the air. Before the knight could even breathe, steel flashed. In a blur of motion, they spun around to face a hooded nightmare emerging from the void. Cold eyes locked onto them. Evan identified the threat immediately. It was the infamous shadow thief, Phanto, an early-game boss monster notorious for his stealth artifact, the Shadow Cape. Dane shouted a warning, sensing the overwhelming danger. Phanto wasted no time, declaring his dark quest to butcher anyone foolish enough to distribute hope in these slums. He sneered at noble titles, claiming Evan's death would just be a happy accident. Rage boiled over in the knight's veins at the insult. But our boy's mind worked at lightning speed. Recalling the lore, Bishop Cetteron only unleashed this assassin when he wanted a target erased from existence. He had predicted this treachery, warning his staff ahead of time, but he realized now that the target wasn't the buildings. It was a massacre of the people. With the killer standing right before them, the real battle was about to explode. Evan scoffed, admitting he hadn't expected the bishop to be desperate enough to summon Phanto. The thief flinched at the mention of his master. Faced with the invisible threat, Evan calmly asked Dane if he possessed the skill to handle this duel solo. The knight gritted his teeth, admitting the difficulty, but swore on his honor to be a human shield until backup arrived. But our main character wasn't about to let a loyal subordinate die. He ordered Dane to shut his eyes and lunged into the fray. He hurled a device at their feet that detonated in a blinding supernova of light, screaming for the knight to strike now. Dane's blade sang through the air, carving a deep wound across the thief's chest. Phanto hit the dirt, and the knight paused, considering an interrogation, but Evan waved him off. Pawns like this knew nothing of value, and there was no time to waste. Suddenly, a massive brute charged with a dagger. Dane roared a warning, but Evan slipped the attack and buried a devastating punch into the giant's gut. The knight tried to protest his master fighting, but Evan brushed the concern aside. The ambush was crushed. Now, his eyes turned to the real enemy. It was time to see how the Marquis dealt with those foolish enough to bite a sleeping dragon. Back at the mansion, tension filled the air. The head butler reported with a scowl that the prisoner remained silent, insisting this was merely a robbery of a wealthy noble. Bishop Cetteron had covered his tracks perfectly. The Night Order feigned ignorance, claiming the attackers were rogue agents acting on their own. They blamed resentment over budget cuts and swore they had no idea the Shurton heir was present. A convenient lie. The Marquis's eyes went cold. Everyone seemed to be underestimating the Shurton bloodline. The butler noted that the bishop had truly lost his mind. He suggested filing a formal complaint to prevent future incidents, but Evan's father scoffed at such a weak response. If the order truly respected them, they never would have dared to lift a finger. No, words were useless now. It was time to remind the world of the Shurton family's terrifying power. The butler then leaned in with crucial intelligence. His son had acquired a weapon capable of shattering the order. 4 days later, Evan stood before his father with a plan. He explained that the countdown had begun. They had the means to deliver a fatal blow to the bishop's reputation. The Marquis raised an eyebrow. Was this connected to his spy within the order? The young strategist smirked. Yes, and patience was the key to victory. She was bringing undeniable proof that would obliterate the bishop's career. And there was more. The holy man was nothing but a thief, siphoning donation funds meant for the headquarters into his own pockets. Evan laid out the final card. Sateran had explicitly ordered the hit on the pharmacy. The plan was simple. Approach the order's headquarters with an offer they couldn't refuse. We pin every sin on the bishop. Let the Marquis's judgment fall upon him. In exchange, the scandal vanishes into the shadows. To salvage the order's crumbling reputation, the Marquis seizes a golden opportunity, a chance to forge alliances and secure absolute power. As Evan coldly observes the board, the order is backed into a corner. They have no path left but total submission. The Marquis hesitates, eyes narrowing dangerously. Is this informant truly reliable? Evan's voice is steady as steel. She is an elite among elites. She wears the mask of a commoner, but I have looked her in the eye. Her loyalty is beyond question. The patriarch nods, his decision final. He turns his gaze to Mabel and Balua. He acknowledges their unwavering devotion to his son. I entrust his life to your hands. Our hero panics. Shine, save me, he screams, thrashing uselessly against his fate. His pleas echo in the hallway as his father departs. 3 days later, Servina presents the fruits of her labor to Evan. This mountain of evidence is all for you. Evan smirks coldly. With this, the bishop is as good as dead. She reveals the truth. This was always her plan. She had been sharpening this blade for years. Evan nods grimly. When the order sees this, they won't just fire him. They will erase his very existence. A shadow crosses her face. Is his blood on my hands? I only wanted his disgrace. Evan cuts through her doubt instantly. The moment he laid a hand on our pharmacy, his death warrant was signed. He assures her, your actions have saved countless others from his greed. These documents are our shield, he explains. They prevent a bloodbath between the Sheridan House and the Order of the Great. Sateran was arrogant. He believed his holy robes made him untouchable to the Marquis. But in the history of Demon War 3, the Marquis crushed the Order like an insect. That fool chose the wrong enemy. Cast aside your guilt. Tears glisten in her eyes. I am honored to have served you, young master. She pledges her life to him, but Evan shakes his head. No, I do not need another servant in the mansion. Remain within the light. If she climbs the ranks to Grand Bishop, his odds of surviving this chaotic world skyrocket. It is a victory for the house, the dungeon city, and his own future survival. Judgment Day arrives. Slander, lies. Sateran shrieks as the guards tackle him. The Marquis's voice booms like thunder. Silence. He recites the sins against the pharmacy and the city. The verdict is swift. Imprison the corrupt knights. Every weed connected to the bishop is pulled. And for Sateran himself? Excommunication followed by the noose. He is dragged away, kicking and screaming. You cannot do this to me. I am the bishop. The Lord stands tall, radiating dominance. This is the fate of all who poison my city's order and threaten the Sheridan bloodline. Stepping outside, he addresses the sea of citizens. True power exists to protect the innocent. Meanwhile, in the tranquil garden, Evan lets out a breath. It is finally over. Brothers Pharmacy stands stronger than ever. And the new bishop? He is already bowing to the Marquis's will. Evan nods. Balance is restored. He turns to his retainer. Is there anything else? Shine steps forward with a report. A new appointment, young master. Highly recommended, despite serving the fallen bishop in the past. Servina Belen stands tall within the cathedral. A serene smile plays on her lips. I look forward to serving the light. Across the city, the people cheer. Brothers Pharmacy is a miracle. The truth is undeniable. Rumors spread like wildfire. Evan is the mastermind. But the boy himself scowls. This disturbs the natural order. He knows he is merely a shadow of his brother. He sighs. I only fought to survive as a background character. How did it come to this? Mabel interrupts his brooding. You are special, Evan. Truly. If you do not wish to rule, then so be it. She smiles warmly. Being special does not mean you must wear the crown of a marquis. Evan confesses his secret plan. I was going to wait until I was 12, during the first inspection. But the time for waiting is over. I will not be the marquis. His eyes burn with resolve. I choose the path of the knight. Tell me, Mabel, what defines an aristocrat? She answers without hesitation. Governance of the land and defense of the dungeon. Precisely. She realizes his intent. His mind drifts to the elite force, the dungeon knight order. Their sole purpose, to conquer the abyss. But a dark memory from the game surfaces. In the original story, he failed. Eric was forced to take the burden and suffered. Not this time. I will clear the dungeons myself. He will be his brother's shield. He recalls the trade manager's promise. 3 more geniuses to add to my ranks. Counting Shine and Balua, he already has 7 stars. The decision is made. I must face father immediately. Mabel speaks up. Shine is honing his blade in the training hall. And Balua, she has wandered off again. Mabel grins mischievously. Better catch her before she gets ideas. Evan replies with a dry look, but his sister keeps pressing the issue. Even though she pleaded to join his elite night order herself, our shrewd protagonist shut it down immediately, reminding her that she already carries the heavy burden of representing the brothers' pharmacy. As they strode through the corridors, he noticed a flurry of urgent movement sweeping through the halls, prompting him to demand answers. A flustered maid stopped to explain the chaos, revealing that the second lady had just given birth to a healthy baby girl. As the reality of a new little sister settled, the entire household's focus shifted violently toward Miriam and her newborn daughter, silencing the toxic whispers about succession wars for the moment. Our calculating hero realized this worked perfectly in his favor, buying him precious time before his own dungeon night announcement would shake the family. Mabel, ever the possessive one, equated his relief to her own desperate desire to remain his exclusive maid, but Evan sat there with a growing sense of unease. Despite the joyous atmosphere, a chill ran down his spine, because in the original lore of Demon War 3, the Chardin family never had a daughter. Given how crucial this noble house was to the game's main scenario, her complete absence from the records was beyond suspicious. He reasoned with a tactician's mind that even a character destined to die young should have appeared at least once in the archives, meaning that, in the original plot, she simply never existed. Perhaps she had married off and vanished? No, that theory was impossible. Since the game's story only begins 9 years from now, he considered the terrifying possibilities either his presence had already shattered the timeline, or she was always fated to be born but never destined to survive. The dark realization struck him that she must have died in the original history, but Mabel cut through his gloom, insisting she was still his number one, no matter how adorable the new arrival might be. Evan let out a heavy sigh, muttering that jealousy was the least of his worries, when suddenly, the newborn girl beamed a bright smile. Evan insisted that pure smile was meant for him, while Eric argued she was clearly admiring his broad warrior shoulders, all while their mother cradled the infant close. Miriam offered heartfelt thanks for the support, humbly deflecting the praise back to the family, but Evan's eyes narrowed as he analyzed Miriam's precarious position as the second wife. The first wife had already secured her power with sons and an heir, while Miriam had remained childless until this moment. In the game, she was written as a malicious, venomous figure, who indirectly orchestrated his death. Yet looking at her now, there was zero trace of that legendary hostility. It dawned on him that her descent into villainy wasn't innate but triggered by future tragedies. Perhaps if he intervened now, he could shatter that cursed chain of fate, preventing the timeline where she becomes a monster and he meets his end. The image of the Marquis's second wife, Miriam D. Sheridan, flashed through his mind. He questioned the core of her character. Had she truly been a villain from the start? Or had she been shoved into the abyss of darkness by a specific incident? A chill took him as he realized he already knew exactly what that tragedy was. Sitting across from him, Bernard laid out a grim possibility, explaining that even within a noble's fortress, protected by elite knights and holy priests, an infant's life hangs by a thread. Bernard concluded that such a calamity would likely strike through invisible means, either a dark curse or a sudden disease. The protagonist muttered the words before slamming his hands down on the table with sudden intensity. Insisting that a shadow was looming over little Elizabeth, the old alchemist replied calmly that he understood, suggesting that since the Marquis's household was an impregnable iron fortress, rather than searching for enemies within, they needed to look beyond the walls. Bernard hinted that he already had a theory, and if his deduction was correct, they wouldn't just be saving Elizabeth, but countless other lives as well. He proposed their first move was to scour the city for traces of monster presence. Bernard recalled a massive reverse flow event in the dungeon recently, a catastrophe they had barely managed to contain earlier this year, which made the current peace even more unsettling. Suddenly, our boy spotted an anomaly on the ground. He signaled the team, pointing to a dark stain and identifying it immediately as orc droppings. Bernard nodded grimly, confirming he had expected to find exactly this kind of filth. Dane questioned if it was truly monster waste, wondering if it had been accidentally mixed into the construction materials. During the city's reconstruction, Bernard noted the color match was identical, assuming it was overlooked, due to the desperate rush to meet the deadline. When pressed, the knight asked why a bit of dirt should matter, pointing out that if dungeon materials were that lethal, the city would have collapsed ages ago, considering their weapons and artifacts were forged from the very same monsters. Bernard shut that logic down firmly, explaining that processed items were completely different. The real danger lay in the raw fluids, like blood or excretion from a monster's body, which act as perfect carriers for plagues. He then dropped the term dungeon sickness on them, a debilitating condition that drains the life force caused by prolonged exposure to a simulated monster habitat. Usually only those with low mana resistance or adventurers venturing into the abyss of the deep levels contract it. Bernard pressed them, asking if they could believe such a curse-like sickness could erupt right here in the open world. He explained that if enough contaminated materials from a specific dungeon region are concentrated in one spot, they can artificially recreate the toxic atmosphere of a dungeon, especially in a city still recovering from a reverse flow. The mana density might be lower, but the sickness spreads just the same even if it burns itself out faster in the fresh air. With a grave tone, he revealed the final horror. Unless the victim is a very weak child, dungeon sickness usually has little effect, but for a newborn, Dane stood frozen, unable to comprehend the shock. The young master alchemist, Bernard, stated coldly that this plague had no cure. He warned that the true nightmare wasn't the initial fever, but the secondary infections that would feast on the weakened body. That is when death becomes a certainty. Since the mana reverse flow incident, the world has been far too fragile. An epidemic is no longer a possibility. It is inevitable. We must hunt down the source before the shadow of death spreads further. We are chasing ghosts in the dark. Evan's eyes sharpened with resolve as he commanded them to alert the Marquis at once. We must cast a protective barrier around the newborns. Suddenly, the doors flew open. Servina rushed in, screaming Evan's name in desperation. Bernard's gaze narrowed. Who dares interrupt? The protagonist explained she was a high priestess of the Great Order, a trusted ally. But panic twisted her features. The pestilence is spreading faster than we can count. Even the holy light cannot purge this darkness fast enough. Dane went pale, realizing if this contagion spreads, the domain is doomed. Take me to them, Evan commanded, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. She nodded, leading them deep into the quarantine zone. Rows of suffering souls filled the hall. Bernard analyzed the patients with his legendary sight. The pathogen it has evolved. However, he smirked, it is no match for my alchemy. He ordered Evan to mobilize the entire Brothers Pharmacy Guild instantly. Evan faced the crowd, his aura radiating authority. We will crush this plague in the cradle, but I need your strength to do it. The alchemists hesitated, fearing a calamity that defied the gods themselves. But Bernard stepped forward, unshaken. Do you take me for a novice? The structure has shifted, but the formula is already complete in my mind. Evan's voice cut through the doubt. You heard the master. Focus your mana and craft the elixir. A roar of determination erupted. The Brothers Pharmacy and the Temple united, diving into the alchemy war. With the Marquis backing them, the containment was absolute. Areas were purified with holy magic and alchemical fire. As the chaos subsided, Evan bowed to Bernard, but the elder shook his head. This was a miracle born of unity, not just skill. Nobles, alchemists, and priests, a rare alliance. His face grew somber. But remember, boy, in war and plague, death always claims its toll. Do not mourn the unavoidable. Cherish the thousands who draw breath today because of you. Evan nodded, steeling his heart. Suddenly, a scream shattered the silence. Mabel crashed into the room, terror in her eyes. It's Lady Liza. She is fading. Evan sprinted down the hall, bursting into the nursery where a mother wept. The infant's breathing was a fragile thread about to snap. Evan's mind raced. Why? The elixir was perfect. Did the formula fail? A cold dread washed over him. What if the cure was useless from the start? He cradled the tiny life, his hands trembling. Save her, please, the mother begged in despair. Evan grit his teeth. I will not let her die. He spun around to face Bernard. His eyes burned with desperation. Is there another way? Tell me there is a way. The old master's eyes gleamed with ancient wisdom as he proposed a forbidden alternative. There existed a legendary elixir, capable of permanently transcending a mortal's physical limits. However, the ingredients were mere myths. It was a concoction so scarce that even he, a veteran who had conquered every installment of the Demon War saga from 0 to 4, had barely heard of it. A realization struck our protagonist like a bolt of lightning. Liz was still level 1. He remembered the golden rule of the game mechanics. Experience points were awarded solely to the one who dealt the final blow. With a desperate plan forming, he summoned a low-level slime. He would whittle its health down to a sliver, preparing to guide her tiny, gloved hand to deliver the coup de grace. Clutching the squirming monster, he whispered urgent encouragement to the infant. She only needed to tap it, just once, to claim the victory. He guided her fist forward. The maids gasped in horror, but he ignored them, focusing all his will on helping her make contact with the weakened creature. As the room held its breath, her hand connected. The slime dissolved into light, shattering into pixels upon the floor. On the bed, the noblewoman pulled her child into a desperate embrace. A heavy sigh of relief escaped Evan's lips. a sentiment the tearful mother echoed with all her heart. His parents stood frozen, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of shock and euphoria. Liz had survived. The Marquis roared for the healers and high priests to enter immediately. Whispers filled the room. It was Evan who had performed the miracle. As they rushed to hug him, Bernard placed a heavy, approving hand on his disciple's head. The alchemist offered high praise. The method was unorthodox, perhaps even mad, but undeniably effective. It was a feat only someone like Evan could have orchestrated. Suddenly, Mabel launched herself at him, tackling him with a tearful, fierce hug. Yet, amidst the warmth, a cold word surfaced in his mind. Velfen. It was a plague that had once brought an entire kingdom to its knees. The memories from the game flooded back, painting a grim picture of history. He wondered how many lives would have been extinguished if not for the Marquis's intervention. His thoughts drifted to a darker timeline. Without the resources of the Brotherhood Pharmacy, the catastrophe would have been absolute. Seeing his dark expression, Bernard chided him to stop dwelling on the what-ifs. Mixing reagents with steady hands, the old master urged him to use his knowledge for the living. But he added a solemn caveat. If even their best efforts failed, then it was acceptable to let go. After all, a world where no one stepped up to help was perhaps not a world worth saving in the first place. Later, back in the safety of the mansion, Evan cradled the sleeping infant. Eric reached out, his face beaming with brotherly affection. Evan smirked, teasing that the baby clearly preferred him. Defeated but happy, Eric pulled them both into a crushing bear hug. Our protagonist jokingly shoved his brother away, careful not to wake Liz. Watching the scene, their father beckoned Evan closer, his voice grave. Saving her was not just a personal victory. He had saved the entire city, perhaps even the country itself. When asked if his motivation lay with his brother, Evan met the Marquis's gaze with burning intensity and made his declaration. He would ascend to the rank of Dungeon Knight Commander. He knew that Eric D. Sheaton, his dedicated older brother, had been pouring blood and sweat into his own training. Our protagonist knew nothing escaped the Marquis's notice. It was time to lay his cards on the table. He formally requested to lead the Dungeon Knights. The Marquis didn't even blink, having already deduced that this ambition was tied to protecting Eric. He granted his approval, vowing to throw the full might of the family behind the Knight Order. However, there was a single, non-negotiable condition. Evan could only assume command upon reaching adulthood. Reluctantly, the boy agreed, and his father advised him to begin laying the groundwork immediately. He needed to prepare both the infrastructure and the warriors he would one day command. As Evan thanked him, the Marquis's tone turned sharp. If everything was not perfect by his 18th birthday, the permission would be revoked instantly. Evan accepted the challenge without hesitation. 7 years. That was the timeline. Evan smiled, revealing he had already christened his future squad. Meanwhile, at the pharmacy, the staff celebrated a job well done. They were eager to wash away the scent of medicinal herbs with the aroma of strong ale. Yet, a select few remained behind. Only they possessed the skill to brew the critical cures. Evan approached Bernard, his brow furrowed with a new concern. He worried that the end of one plague would lead to complacency. Peace, after all, often made people dull and careless. They had to be ready to strike faster when the next disaster loomed. The old man assured him that their relentless work was the answer. The crisis had catapulted the Brotherhood Pharmacy into the spotlight. Now, even the king would be forced to recognize their immense value. Their influence would soon eclipse even the religious order. As our protagonist absorbed this, Bernard predicted an imminent royal summons for the Marquis. The king would undoubtedly demand that the Brotherhood Pharmacy expand its reach across the entire kingdom. Bernard nodded sagely. A branch in the capital was the logical compromise. Though the king might greedily demand the headquarters relocate, a demand the Marquis would never entertain. Just as predicted, the Marquis informed his son that they were bound for the royal capital. The king had called. Evan feigned protest, citing proper etiquette and suggesting Eric go in his stead. But his father was insistent. Secretly, our boy's mind raced. This was a golden opportunity to scavenge hidden artifacts and secret knowledge from the 3rd and 4th installments of the Demon War. Perhaps he could even unearth secrets from the earlier games. As the carriage rattled forward, he sat alongside Shine, Belua, and the Marchioness. After a grueling 2-week journey, they arrived at a familiar estate. Evan's heart sank. He knew that Count Byron's noble house was destined for total ruin before the Third War even began. Engaging with a doomed family would only bring misfortune. He muttered his concerns, prompting a sharp question from the shadows. Did he fear his words might cloud the Marquis's judgment? The Marquis simply smiled, declaring that a father's trust in his son was absolute. Besides, with them around, perhaps the family wouldn't be ruined after all. Suddenly, the doors burst open. A servant gasped out. The news envoys from the royal palace were here. An urgent summons arrived from His Majesty, like a bolt of lightning, leaving both father and son completely bewildered. Usually, the aristocracy isn't called upon with such frantic haste. But the moment Evan and the Marquis bowed before the throne, the Emperor waved his hand, dismissing all stiff protocol. No need for such suffocating manners between old friends, he chuckled. His Majesty beamed, noting that the Marchioness hadn't changed a bit. The nobleman smiled back, returning the warm sentiment. The air was thick with camaraderie, not politics. Then, the Emperor's gaze shifted. Is this the famous jewel of the Sheridan family? Evan stepped forward with knightly grace, announcing his full name with pride. It is an infinite honor and glory to stand before the ruler of this land. The Emperor nodded approvingly. He certainly has his father's spirit. The Marquis bowed low. That is the greatest praise a father could hope for. But their host merely hummed, cutting through the pleasantries. Let us get straight to the point. He wanted to reward the boy's legendary accomplishments with the brothers' pharmacy. The child has done exceptional work, the Emperor declared. Then came the strategic play. He suggested establishing a branch right here in the capital. The Marquis took the cue, ready to talk business. Beyond just new locations, the Emperor offered a shield of iron. He pledged to protect them from the Order of the Great, and crush any opposition that dared stand in their way. But when they drilled down to the details, the sticking point became the distribution rights. The Emperor wanted the medicinal herbs exclusive to the capital branches, a move to silence critics and secure the city's health under his banner. The Marquis countered with cold logic. My success in halting the plague proves one thing. This city needs a pharmacy, just as much as Sheridan does. Neither Titan was willing to back down. Our protagonist realized he had to back his father in this clash of wills. But suddenly, the Emperor turned his gaze to Evan. Perhaps I was too eager to meet you in person, he admitted with a sly glint. Then, he dropped the unexpected bomb. There is a magnificent garden within the palace. You should go rest there. Both Evan and his father were blindsided by the dismissal. Evan tried to object, offering a polite thanks. But the Emperor was already shouting orders. Is anyone there? Guide the second son of the Sheridan family to the gardens immediately. Royal guards swarmed in an instant. Evan's heart sank. He had lost his chance to be his father's wingman in the negotiation. The garden is this way, one guard directed. Evan sighed, formulating a new plan. He would continue his slime training, but first, he requested some privacy. The guard obliged, leaving him to his own devices. Alone in the lush greenery, Evan walked as a faint, mystic blue glow seeped from his hand. The mana surged within him, vast and potent. His alchemy training hadn't just sharpened his mind, it had evolved his physical vessel as well. Yet, he had zero combat skills to unleash that energy. All he could do was brew potions. With his mana issues solved, he focused on a new technique, compressing the summoned slimes. In his mind's eye, a massive slime shrank down to a tiny, dense version. If he could summon smaller slimes, he could spawn 4 or 5 at once and crush them instantly. Doubling his grinding speed would be a game changer. After all, slime training was the secret path to infinite power. But abruptly, a voice shattered his concentration. What are you doing? Evan jolted, whipping around to demand an identity. His eyes locked onto a figure standing before him, a girl with hair the color of cherry blossoms. She stood silently, holding a wriggling worm in her hand. Stepping closer, she offered the creepy crawler. Do you want to touch it? Absolutely not, Evan shouted, recoiling. She studied him, circling like a curious cat. Then she leaned in, her face inches from his. You are just as pretty as this worm, she remarked. I have never heard that before, Evan stammered. She insisted that worms were beautiful. Evan could only conclude one thing. You are a seriously weird kid. But then, a memory sparked in his brain. Pink hair. The royal palace. He recalled the characters from Demon War. Are you Serena? He asked hesitantly. She nodded. I am Serena L. Silkline, the Emperor's youngest daughter, and the trigger for a major quest in Demon War 4. It all clicked. The Emperor, sending him to the garden wasn't random. Serena stated she was 10 years old before demanding his age. Our boy straightened his posture. I am Evan de Chateau, 11 years old, and the youngest of my family, so you are older, she noted. Then, staring at him with intense, piercing eyes, she asked about the invisible energy in his palm. What about the little friends in your hand? Why are you killing them? The question hung heavy in the air. Serena looked deep into Evan's soul. The little friends. They are screaming for you to save them. Then she demanded to know why he was tormenting them. Evan was confused. What do you mean? Save them? She covered her ears as if in pain. I cannot hear it anymore. I guess they are all dead now. A chill ran down Evan's spine as he remembered the lore. In the original game, when the princess was kidnapped by demons, she was brainwashed and forced to rule over powerful monsters as a puppet queen. Could this be her latent ability manifesting already? Living her whole life in the safe palace, she never would have known she was a born beast tamer. Lying was futile. She had already seen the summon. Evan decided on the brutal truth. It is for my survival. I get stronger by killing them. And if I am strong, I can endure anything. To prove his point, he summoned a slime and crushed it instantly. Serena stared blankly. You cannot die, she said simply. Then she made a request. Spare just one. Evan sighed, asking which one she wanted. As she pointed, the Mirasol's necklace glowed hot in his hand. It will not attack if I release it, she promised. Evan quickly scanned the area. Let's move to the fountain. It is safer there. She nodded, and the two walked together, destiny shifting with every step. By the shimmering water, our protagonist channeled his mana into the artifact. A small, glowing fire slime materialized. Serena gasped, marveling at the unique creature. He offered it to her, admitting his lack of control. I cannot command it yet. She eagerly reached out, calling it cute. Careful, Evan warned, tension spiking. But she dismissed his fear with a smile. Is it truly harmless? He wondered. The slime wiggled happily in her hand, tamed by her very presence. Evan mentions that training would be a nightmare if every slime behaved this wildly, but Serena interjects with a grin. Most of these creatures are mindless beasts, acting purely on killer instinct, which technically makes them guilt-free targets to hunt. But when he asks who taught her such things, she calmly drops a bombshell. It was Ruby. She's already named the monster. And not just that, she can hear its thoughts. Their souls are bound by a contract. Evan realizes she can raise its level just by bonding. Her eyes sparkle as she asks the ultimate question. Can she soul bond with a worm? Evan crushes her dreams. It only works with monsters. Defeated, she cuddles Ruby close. Back in the garden, he tries to explain her powers, but she's still hung up on the worm idea. He leaves that terrifying question unanswered. Later, the mood shifts at dinner, as the Marquise delivers a royal decree. The king is pushing for an engagement between Evan and the princess. Evan rejects it instantly, shocking the entire table. His father sighs, admitting he already said no, but the king is as stubborn as a mule and refuses to back down. Evan is baffled. Why him? There are countless noble families desperate for this connection, but the Marquis reveals the truth. It isn't about politics. The king wants the genius boy who founded Brothers Pharmacy and saved the kingdom from plague. This is Evan's worst nightmare. He's terrified that his cover is blown. He's supposed to be an unremarkable background character, not a hero. He begs his father to tell the king he's trash, unworthy of royalty. The Marquis urges him to be honest about his feelings instead. Evan hesitates. Memories of Serena and her slime obsession flooding back. When pressed, he recalls her chaotic confession. She told him to drop the formalities because she likes him. As much as she likes worms. Evan blinks, unsure if that's a compliment. He admits she has the beauty of a future queen, though perhaps not as stunning as Bella, but her personality is a total mystery. Honestly, she's exhausting. He'd prefer to stay far away from that whirlwind of energy. His father looks him in the eye. Does he truly want to reject this? Evan doesn't stutter. I never want to see that girl again. The Marquis practically collapses in relief. He was terrified. Evan actually had feelings for her. The king's persistence made everyone think they were a match made in heaven. Evan realizes His Majesty is practically holding him hostage to force a romance. But then, the Marquis drops the itinerary. A 4-day summit regarding the pharmacy begins tomorrow, and the king explicitly ordered Evan's presence. However, his father offers a loophole. He'll handle the boring meetings so Evan can enjoy a tour of the capital instead. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Serena rushes in, screaming his name, demanding a playdate. Evan freezes, in pure horror. He shoots a betrayed look at his father so much for keeping them apart. He asks what royalty is doing wandering the streets. Serena grins, pointing to her elite guards lurking in the shadows. Evan tries to escape, claiming his schedule is packed. But the princess is faster. She counters immediately, declaring that if he's busy, she'll simply adjust her schedule to fit his. Our protagonist stipulates one condition. Absolutely 0 worms allowed. He leaves the rest to her imagination. Turning to Shine and Bella, he commands them to gear up. It's time for a shopping spree to blend in with the commoners. Since they'll be undercover for 3 days, uniforms are a no-go. Shine looks shocked. Is he included in this treat? Evan nods firmly. Bella promises they will be ready in a heartbeat. He explains to the princess that these aren't just servants. They are his treasured friends, victims of cruel circumstance. He asks her to treat them with respect, and she agrees instantly. But the question remains, why is she really here? Serena confesses she told the king she wanted to play with brother Evan. And the king just allowed it? Evan sweats nervously. Did she mention the chaos of yesterday? She nods innocently. She told her father about the garden, the slime, and the bond. Evan starts to panic when she adds one more detail. She told the king she likes Evan as much as worms. And the king completely understood. Evan's soul leaves his body. This misunderstanding is a one-way ticket to a forced marriage. He wanted her wild spirit to be free, not leashed to him. She insists it was just an innocent request to play. With a heavy sigh of defeat, Evan realizes he's trapped. He agrees to hang out, but forces her to pinky promise. Keep this a secret. Serena beams like the sun, sealing the deal. Later, they arrive at a high-end boutique. The owner greets the princess with a bow before his eyes widen at Evan. It's the young master of Sheridan. Evan waves off the fanfare, demanding the finest fabrics for Shine and Bella immediately. Only the best for his crew. He confirms the clothes are enchanted to expand, and the shopkeeper nods enthusiastically. Magic threads that adjust to growth spurts. Serena tilts her head, puzzled by the logic. Why not just buy new ones later? Our boy explains his philosophy. Clothes worn over time become vessels for precious memories. Her eyes light up. Do clothes really hold memories? When he nods, she shyly proposes a brilliant idea. She'll buy his outfit, and he'll buy hers. That way, they'll both carry a piece of each other's memories wherever they go. He agrees to the proposal. The curtains part, and Shine steps out, looking sharp in a brand new outfit, with Evan following suit. Clad in a pristine white suit accented with gold, the young master looked regal. Soon, the princess emerged, spinning in a frilly pink dress and asking for his verdict. He compliments her beauty effortlessly. However, he quietly questions if she intends to wear such attire today, and when she confirms, confusion clouds his gaze. He dismisses the concern with a wave of his hand. Meanwhile, Belua offers a graceful bow, expressing her deepest gratitude for the stunning gift. Serena gushes over Belua's radiance, declaring she is even lovelier than a worm, a strange compliment indeed. The shopkeeper thanks Evan for his patronage. She expresses joy in helping them select the ensembles. Our boy returns the thanks before casually requesting to purchase one final item. It was a garment with a twisted crimson design. He asks for it to be wrapped with extreme care, ignoring her explanation. She insists it is merely a size-adjusting piece, but he commands her to wrap it tightly, ensuring its contents remain a mystery to prying eyes. In reality, it is a cursed artifact capable of summoning a kraken. But today's true objective was securing the magic dress, a critical move to avoid his fated death. It was a hidden piece in the game, essential for his survival. While browsing, Evan sifts through the jewelry display. He notes that the craftsmanship in the capital far exceeds the items available back in their territory. Shine calls him out for being vain, and our boy fires back a witty retort. Shine then questions how his master possesses such deep pockets. He assumes the pharmacy business is booming, while Belua chimes in, reminding them of the Marquis's generous allowance. The protagonist admits their itinerary is far from over, as there are still key locations to visit. But first, they must feast. The group arrives before a massive structure, imposing and grand. Shine squints, unsure if this is a cafe or a nobleman's estate. The young master clarifies that it is a renovated mansion. Shine nods, impressed, but insists it better be the finest establishment in the capital. After all, royalty is in their midst. Evan simply smirks, noting the prize lies within. Upon entry, the owner welcomes Serena with open arms. Guests whisper, wondering if these are foreign nobles, though some recognize Evan as the legendary jewel of the Sheridan family. The owner offers any seat, but Evan specifically demands the room in the right corner of the second floor. The manager freezes, warning that customers avoid that room and that it has fallen into disuse. Our boy insists, and a gold coin flips through the air, landing perfectly in the man's palm. The staff scrambles to clean and set the table with the finest silver. Once served, Evan begins a strange dining ritual. Starting with the soup, he proceeds to the salad and bread, followed by the fish, deliberately ignoring the meat course for now. Finally, he cuts into the steak before instructing the others to consume a piece of cake and sip their Earl Grey tea. He notices Shine looking restless and asks if the food is not to his liking. Shine shakes his head. It is not the strange dining order, but an unnatural chill filling the room. Suddenly, a realization strikes him. He senses an invisible presence. Belua calms him, assuring that the entity will not manifest yet. She says it will wait until the meal ends. And true enough, as the plates are cleared, the spirit of a girl materializes. Evan, Shine, and Belua watch as she gently fades away. He celebrates the success, nearly slipping into gaming terminology out loud. Serena shoots him a puzzled look. Recovering quickly, he points to where the ghost stood and offers an explanation. They have just helped a lost soul find peace. He recalls the hidden objective, eating the spirit's favorite dishes in a specific order. This unlocks a rare, permanent boost to their existence level and skill growth. Serena asks if the ghost left a reward. He explains it was merely a blessing. Belua feels the surge of energy, but Shine remains pale as a sheet. Shine stammers, asking about the spirit's fate. When confirmed she is gone, he asks if he has permission to faint. He collapses face first. Afterward, inside the room, Balua secures the door and reports the area is safe. She confirms their privacy. Evan praises her diligence before turning to the table, now glistening with an array of gems. Crystals and jewelry sparkle under the light. With Balua and Serena at his side, our boy takes charge. He suggests they tally their spoils. As he counts, Evan finds 32 treasures in total. He is stunned, not expecting to find artifacts dating back to the First Great Demon War. Serena inspects the hoard. Balua worries about the safety of leaving them, but the protagonist reassures her, explaining the unique properties of artifacts. They possess their own magical durability. The princess is confused. Why were such powerful items in a common jewelry store? He lifts a glowing ring, clarifying that the world is blind to their true value. He explains that not all artifacts radiate power. Some only reveal their true nature over time, their magic awakening slowly. Others hold dormant potential, remaining ordinary stones, if not treated with the proper care, he adds, with a knowing smile. Some artifacts are like sleeping beasts. They only reveal their true power when claimed by a master or flooded with mana. Serena recalls a certain palace mage, a keeper of the treasury, who once mocked that ordinary eyes could stare at these relics for eternity, yet never glimpse their true worth. Attempting such scrutiny in a high-end shop, however, would only earn a swift kick to the curb. Bella realizes the shopkeeper just let a fortune slip through his fingers, and Evan nods, noting with a smirk that the fool's ignorance was their gain. But when the curious princess tries to dig deeper into his appraisal methods, he shuts her down cold, claiming it's a trade secret. Not one to give up, Serena boldly demands he gift her one. Evan sighs, telling her that begging is unbecoming of royalty. However, she counters with a tempting proposal. She will liberate a treasure from the royal palace in exchange for his generosity. A glint enters our young master's eyes. He recognizes the potential of this trade and agrees to the terms, sealing the pact. She pouts, insisting this isn't a cold business deal, but a heartfelt exchange of gifts. When he tells her to take her pick, she plays the coy maiden, asking him to choose for her. He selects a stunning piece, introducing it as the Tigress Glory. Evan explains that, for a tamer, this is a god-tier item, drastically boosting success rates and allowing the user to manifest a defensive barrier by infusing it with pure mana. The princess declares it flawless, but the moment it touches her skin, the necklace erupts in blinding light. Our boy watches the phenomenon, stunned. This reaction wasn't in the game lore. Had the artifact's nature evolved? Serena arrogantly proclaims that her prowess as a monster tamer has simply ascended, declaring, the necklace has recognized its true master. Evan decides to play along with her ego. Now, it was time to collect his debt. He instructs her carefully. If the specific item he desires sits in the palace vault, she must retrieve it at all costs. She agrees, a mischievous smile playing on her lips as she vows to deliver. She even jokes about stealing her father's legendary ceremonial sword, a suggestion Evan immediately shoots down in panic. Later, as the royal guest prepares to depart, Serena confirms that her mission is solely to fetch the item he described. Evan muses internally that to the uninitiated, the artifact is worthless trash, so the king shouldn't miss it. Turning his attention to Bella, he suggests she pick a reward for herself as well. But the humble maid recoils, denying she deserves anything, reminding him that the princess's gift was part of a transaction. He counters smoothly, saying this isn't business, it's simply a present for his loyal shadow. As she looks up, stunned, he reveals a pair of earrings. He introduces them as the Volcanic Spirit earrings, explaining they grant rapid mana recovery and amplify all flame attribute arts. Bella's eyes widen in disbelief. She asks if these are the legends she's heard of, and he confirms, adding that they are the twins set to the snow, mountain spirit earrings. She trembles, refusing to accept them. How could a servant wear a treasure equal to that of her young master? When he asks if she dares to reject his goodwill, she whispers that she is simply not worthy. Our boy isn't having it. With gentle dominance, he places the crimson gems in her hand, urging her to stop being so stoic and whine a little, instead of bottling up her feelings. Bella warns him that if she unleashes her true emotions, it might be too much for him to handle. The protagonist smirks, telling her to speak her mind freely. After all, there is no problem he cannot solve. Her heart melts. She dons the earrings, thanking him softly, and asks him to call her Lua from this moment on. The next day, Evan announces a treasure hunt, seeking gear to safeguard his life. He decides to abandon the noble district and dive into the chaotic, hidden shops of the capital. Speaking to Shine, he notes the hectic schedule ahead, hoping the high-maintenance princess leaves soon. Suddenly, Evan pauses, eyeing his butler with suspicion. Shine's expression is unreadable, a mask of misery. Noticing his condition, our boy asks what on earth is wrong with him. He reminds Shine that while he passed out yesterday, he seemed perfectly fine upon returning to the mansion. The protagonist teases, asking if he looks like a walking corpse because of a bad breakup. Shine mutters that his body feels like lead. Evan wonders if the buff failed, explaining that he feels rejuvenated. Shine replies that he definitely received the blessing, yet a bone-deep chill lingers, and his limbs feel weighed down by invisible chains. The young master suddenly has a revelation. Without missing a beat, he tosses a pair of silver bracelets to Shine, ordering him to equip them immediately. Shine asks if these are mere jewelry, but Evan explains they are the ghost bracelets, artifacts that boost movement and attack speed by 15%. He admits he wanted god-tier gear for his tank, but these will suffice until they clear the 60th floor of the dungeon. Shocked, Shine stammers, repeating 60th floor, as the protagonist casually mentions the current elite team has only reached the 45th. Evan warns him not to get addicted to the speed boost, as Shine will eventually need a balanced build of defense and velocity. Evan asks for a status report. His companion dashes forward, admitting he is faster, but the crushing weight on his soul remains. In that split second, a sinister, dark shadow manifests behind him, and Evan stares in absolute horror. As Shine demands answers about the eerie phenomenon, Shine brushes it off as nothing until the spectral maid drifts uncomfortably close. A double scream of terror echoes through the room as both believe she had passed on, but she casually explains she thought so too. She claims she just went for a nap only to wake up beside him instead. Shine roars for her to leave, accusing her of being the source of the crushing weight on his body. She admits she already tried to depart and failed, wondering why the afterlife has such lag. With a mischievous glint, she asks if perhaps he is possessed, sending Shine into a panic attack until our boy intervenes. Reminding her of her earlier comment about comfort, the ghost grins and points a translucent finger at the bracelet. Claiming the accessory radiates good vibes, she asks to move in, promising it will cure Shine's supernatural chills and heavy shoulders. Shine practically begs her to enter immediately, and she cheerfully thanks him, diving into the bracelet while ignoring Evan's weak protests. The protagonist freezes, realizing this is a hidden event he never encountered, a scenario that never existed in Demon War 4. As the bracelet absorbs its first resident, she coos about the coziness, confirming the item's true name, the Ghost Bracelet. His gamer brain spins into overdrive, realizing this artifact might have been designed as a spirit vessel from the very beginning. This event was absent from the original game, meaning they have just unlocked a secret growth feature for the item. Shine looks at the accessory with skepticism, noting it appears exactly the same as when he first equipped it. But Evan insists this is a legendary upgrade. Shine disagrees, pointing out the ghost is still technically there, though she chimes in that she loves her new room. A sharp knock breaks their debate as Bella and Serena enter, announcing it is time for the protagonist to head out. Keeping the destination a mystery, he signals Shine to wait. Serena steps forward with a shy smile and hands him a box. She declares it is the gift she promised earlier. Inside lies a short sword that makes his eyes widen in pure shock. He instantly recognizes the Limit Breaker, a legendary item from Demon War 3 that usually requires grinding massive contribution points. To the royal family just to obtain it, Serena tilts her head, asking what it is, and he explains it is a tool to shatter boundaries. He holds back the deeper details, thinking to himself that with this, he can finally surpass the hard cap of artifact equipment. For a glass cannon like him, who could die at any moment even with 5 defensive items equipped, unlocking a 6th slot is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Lifting the dagger, he whispers, the command word, limitless. Golden energy explodes outward. As a lock manifests over an empty slot, chains shatter into light, and the seal breaks. The interface dissolves as the slot fully unlocks. Shine stares in confusion, asking what just happened, while Serena watches intently. She wonders if that was the correct usage. Evan replies that it is complicated, but confirms his capacity has just leveled up. She nods, understanding his unquenchable thirst for gear, guessing he plans to hunt for more artifacts, which he happily confirms. Later on the streets, Evan looks ready to collapse. Serena asks why he is tired, despite only 4 hours of shopping. Our boy seriously wonders if the necklace he gave her grants infinite stamina. She then chirps, asking for the next destination. Desperate for a break, he suggests food first, mentioning a specific spot nearby. Shine raises an eyebrow in curiosity. The young master tells him to trust the process. Soon the group stands before a massive, imposing building. Dane asks how he knows this place, and the protagonist explains, it is famous Amy's Kicking, is a crucial hub in Demon War 2, and it remains vital in Demon War 3, a legendary tavern where party members are recruited and main quests trigger. It even attracts big shots, like the Silent Knight. Shine worries about the alcohol, but Evan waves him off. Noting they have a squad of guards, and the sun is still up, Dane agrees it is safe, while our boy focuses on his true objective. This is the gathering point for the kingdom's elite mercenaries. The captain barks at the guards to stay sharp among these roughnecks. They strut into the restaurant, and Evan orders a large table, along with 7 servings of the Kicking Special. Shine scans the crowd, sensing the heavy aura of powerful warriors gathered here, and our boy nods in confirmation. stating this is the watering hole for the country's strongest at the table. Belua asks why they risked coming to such a dangerous dive. Evan confesses he is here to find a treasure, though internally, he corrects that the treasure is a person, reassuring her about their safety. He casually drops her nickname Lua, causing Shine to jump in shock. Serena immediately mimics it, asking if she can use it too. But Lua shuts her down with a polite refusal, leaving the princess to pout, while Shine and the protagonist watch the drama unfold. The feast arrives, plates piled high with the special, and he signals everyone, including the guards, to dig in. The guards offer thanks. Shine attacks the food, and Lua takes a dainty bite, while our boy scans the room like a radar. Searching for faces from the Demon War series mid-meal, a presence catches his eye, and his gaze locks on the bar. A figure sits there with blonde hair and a robe suggesting a priest, but a second glance reveals the cold glint of steel armor underneath. Beneath the grime, Evan's eyes locked onto a legend. That was Ryan Drukas, the Unbreakable Shield, a name destined for infamy in Demon War 4, famous for an impenetrable defense and relentless regeneration. Yet, across the tavern, this future titan was just slumping at the bar. Dane's gaze drifted to the same sorrowful figure. He nodded, confirming the presence of a man whose name carried the heavy weight of destiny. The captain unspooled Ryan's tragic history. Once a child prodigy praised for divine power, he scorned the robes of a priest to walk the bloody path of a holy knight. But fate is cruel. Lacking the physique for war, he failed miserably. Life gave him two bitter choices: abandon the sword, or waste a decade waiting for another chance. Crushed by reality, he chose a third option: drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Our boy filed that intel away. With a nudge from Serena, he marched forward, his confident steps finally piercing Ryan's drunken haze. The fallen knight turned his weary gaze upon him. Unfazed, our protagonist greeted the legend, casually asking for a seat at the table. Evan slid into the seat beside him. At the mention of his name, Ryan's eyes flew open. He scrambled to his feet, bewildered. Why would a noble of such status sit with a reject like him? Meanwhile, our boy played dumb, wondering why a majestic holy knight, Captain Hopeful, was rotting away in a tavern. Ryan slammed his tankard down. Memories of his sacred vow clawed at his throat. To become a blade of the church, to wage war against darkness, and earn the Almighty's favor through blood and confession. Ryan confessed his origins a student of a ruined foreign noble house. He was born blessed with an ocean of mana, but zero talent for magic. Everyone pushed him toward the priesthood, but his heart burned with a desire to protect someone special. That desire birthed a miracle. He received a blessing and defied expectations, pivoting his destiny toward becoming a holy knight. Yet, reality struck back. No matter the weapon, they felt wrong in his hands. He admitted the shameful truth. He wasn't just bad at combat, he was hopeless. Every instructor looked at him with disdain, begging him to quit. But Ryan? He possessed a stubbornness that rivaled steel. He roared that God's power was meant for the front lines, for shielding the weak with his body, not casting cowardly heels from the rear. Intrigued, our protagonist dropped the million-gold question. What is this power? Ryan whispered the answer: the Guardian's blessing. A divine gift reserved only for the truest martyrs, those willing to sacrifice their very flesh for others. It was the ultimate taunt, a curse that forces every monster to ignore his allies and hunt him down. It was a passive beacon of death that grew even more potent when he unleashed the Holy Knight's divine shout. Evan grinned. It was the absolute perfect kit for a human meat shield. Ryan nodded, but his shoulders slumped. What good was drawing aggro if he lacked the strength to strike back? He felt utterly pathetic. Our boy wasn't having that pity party. He pressed harder. How did you save them back then? He reminded Ryan of the key word: protection, not slaughter. Ryan admitted he used his body as bait, luring the horde of monsters away from the innocent. He ran until his lungs burned, just to keep them safe. He called it cowardice. Evan called it legendary, he declared. For a warrior to fight is instinct, but for the weak to step into the jaws of death to save another, that is the definition of true courage. Ryan froze, the words piercing his heart. Our boy looked him dead in the eye and branded him with a new title: hero. Realizing his blessing was a badge of honor, not shame, Ryan trembled. No one had ever acknowledged him like this. Our protagonist waited for the moment of awakening. The fog was lifting. When asked if the despair had faded, Ryan admitted the weight on his soul had lightened, if only a little. Evan doubled down, swearing he would become the greatest holy knight in history. But Ryan shook his head, a strange calmness in his eyes. That title, it doesn't matter anymore. Evan blinked, totally blindsided. Had he broken the future legend? Ryan clarified swiftly. He no longer gave a damn about the world's judgment. Listening to Evan had forged a new resolve of steel. From this day forth, he would follow only his own path, to protect the weak, no matter what the critics said. Our boy smirked internally. This went even better than the game script. With the mood set, Evan stepped up for the formal recruitment. I am Evan D. Sheridan, second son of the iron-fisted Marquis Sulaine D. Sheridan, ruler of the Dungeon City. Ryan straightened his spine, introducing himself as a scion of the noble Drucus bloodline, the family whose ancestors once face-tanked a dragon's breath. He bowed his head, thanking Evan for saving his soul. He found the will to walk forward again. Evan mused that perhaps the Almighty wasn't playing dice. He gave Ryan that blessing for this exact moment. Finally, our boy laid his cards on the table. The Marquis title won't be mine, he explained, with zero regret. When I come of age, I will forge my own legend, my own Knight Order. He extended a hand toward the fallen tank. I want you, Ryan, not just for your power, but for your indomitable will to shield others from harm. Join me. Let us protect this city together. Ryan humbled himself, calling it an honor far too great for a failed knight. But if Evan was crazy enough to hire a man who couldn't swing a sword, then he would dedicate his life to being the ultimate shield. The deal was sealed with a handshake. He was officially the first pillar of the new order. Suddenly, boom, treasure chests burst open nearby. Gold, jewels, and artifacts flooded the room in a blinding display of wealth. The Marquis roared, demanding answers, and Evan grinned. Time to explain. He claimed it was sheer fortune that led him to the treasure, intending to use it to bankroll his new Knight Order. Without wasting a moment, he presented Ryan to his father. He explained that he had discovered this diamond in the rough within the capital. Ryan bowed low, formally declaring his name and swearing his resolve. He pledged his life as a dungeon knight, ready to fight by his young master's side in the trials to come. Evan then played his hand, asking the Marquis for a favor. He offered the artifacts to buy his friend's freedom from the Order. But the great Marquis merely laughed, his generosity overflowing. He had already secured the funds for Ryan, rendering the trade unnecessary. With business concluded, Evan walked away with new artifacts. His equipment capacity expanded significantly, and Ryan Drucus was officially inducted into the Knight Order. But outside the estate, a heavy farewell awaited. The princess gazed at him with longing, wishing he could stay within the palace walls. She whispered that her father would grant her freedom, but only if she were by Evan's side. But his duty lay in the Dungeon City. He confessed he might never return to the capital again. Her face fell as she realized the gravity of his words. It sounded like a final goodbye. Evan didn't sugarcoat the truth. Since the Marquis rejected the engagement, their ties were severed. Yet, fire burned in her eyes as she vowed to see him again. Evan cautioned her against such reckless declarations. A jewel as precious as the princess had no place wandering the wild. He reminded her that danger lurked in every shadow. The world outside was not a playground. Only the strong could survive and protect their own dignity. Taking his warning as a challenge, her spirit ignited. She declared she would forge her own strength until she was worthy to visit him. She even boldly claimed she would join his Knight Order one day. Our protagonist could only sigh at her stubbornness, telling her to follow that path. If she could truly gain such power, he would not stop her. She accepted the challenge without hesitation, but before they parted ways, she made one final, intimate request. When they next met, he was to call her by her affection name, Ray. As the carriages rumbled away from the capital, the mood shifted. Ryan sensed that calamity would surely stalk their master's path. Shine agreed, noting that not one, but a legion of dangers lay in wait. The road ahead was paved with peril. Ryan likened Evan's ability to read the world's secrets to a cursed blessing. Such forbidden knowledge always demanded a heavy price. Shine sighed, his resolve hardening. Protecting the master's life was their absolute priority, above all else. Without him, there would be no Dungeon City and no Knight Order. Ryan swore to raise his sword against any threat, but Evan cut him off, bluntly pointing out his terrible swordsmanship. Ryan flinched, admitting his enthusiasm had overshadowed his lack of skill. Our boy clarified he wasn't calling him useless, only that his path was different. With absolute certainty, he reminded him that his true talent lay in protection. God had not bestowed such a sturdy physique upon him for no reason. Ryan was confused. How could he protect without fighting? The answer was simple, yet profound. He didn't need a blade to protect, only the weapon that matched his soul. Realization dawned on Ryan as he whispered, "A shield?" Evan smiled. The day Ryan faced that monster, his true combat style had already awakened. Our protagonist explained the strategy. Ryan was born to be the Iron Wall. He would redirect the enemy's wrath onto himself, bringing foes down while keeping the party untouched. What greater purpose could a guardian ask for? He asked why Ryan ignored what happened, and the giant admitted it was out of shame. Yet, the strategy sounded incredibly effective. Evan emphasized that in a party, Ryan's talent was the cornerstone of victory. Ryan finally laughed, calling his past stubbornness foolish. He accepted that wielding a sword wasn't the only path to glory. Looking at our boy, that traumatic battle transformed into a proud memory. He vowed to master the shield. If he could protect his comrades, he would gladly stand on the front lines. Our protagonist instructed him to focus purely on defense, leaving the slaughter to the others. In his mind, the ultimate team was forming: the unbreakable shield, Raihan, the silent knight, Shine, and Balua, the blood witch. United, they would be an unstoppable force of nature. Ryan then asked the crucial question: would Evan be fighting too? He reasoned that as knight captain, he would be a prime target. Shine questioned if risking the commander was wise. Balua stepped in, insisting the captain need not dirty his hands. Evan thanked her, but corrected them. He had to enter the dungeon, but not as a warrior. He would be the tactical support, the backbone of the team. He revealed he had been studying high-tier alchemy under the legendary Bernard. Ryan gasped. Such ancient arts were rare indeed. Evan played it cool, claiming it was just luck to find a good teacher. He promised to support them from the rear shadows. While Shine and Balua renewed their vows of protection, the destination appeared. The carriages rolled into Styma, the famous town of hot springs. Shine admitted he was a stranger to such luxury. Balua shyly confessed the same, followed by Ryan. It was, in fact, Evan's first time in this life as well. The Marquis teased, wondering if our boy could handle the heat, but Evan smirked. The scorching water was exactly what his body needed. He wouldn't miss this chance to recover after the long journey. The Marquis chuckled, noting that the springs didn't care about noble status. In the steam, everyone was equal. However, they did care about gender. He pointed Balua to the women's bath, causing the stoic girl to freeze in surprise. As Balua scolds Shine for his noise, the inn door creaks open and the young master steps onto the scene. He finds his retainers unpacking and checks their progress, but Shine just looks confused as to why the boss is even here. Wasn't he supposed to be soaking in luxury with the Marquis? Evan shrugs, replying that he chose the comfort of a nap first. Shine's eyes narrow with suspicion. Are they visiting a nearby dungeon? Is that the secret reason the captain stayed behind? Evan shuts that down immediately, reminding him he's too weak for that death trap. But he admits their time will come eventually. Ryan steps in to drop some lore, explaining that there are only 3 massive dungeons in the world capable of supporting a dungeon city: the Silk Line, the Magic Kingdom's Palati, and the trading hub of the Commerce Nation. Aside from the big 3, there are plenty of small fry dungeons scattered about like loose change. But only the great dungeons grant the divine blessing of leveling up. Shine asks the million-gold question. What about the one here? Evan explains. It is a restricted zone. The difficulty is hellish, though teams enter regularly for maintenance. It keeps the monsters from spilling into town, and sometimes rare artifacts form, or the dungeon itself starts acting up. Shine's greed perks up. Is a part of the dungeon turning into loot? Are they here to secure a mansion? Our boy smirks. He isn't here for a house. He plans to steal a hot spring and drag it all the way back to their city. Cut to the steam. Shine stands on the edge of the water, looking terrified as he questions Evan. Is this boiling lava really a hot spring? He claims he'll cook alive. Evan just points at the crowd, already enjoying the soak. Even his father is in there. But Shine protests the Marquis is basically a demigod, while he is just a fragile mortal. If you're going to die, do it quietly. Evan grabs his towel and Spartangent kicks him straight into the boiling abyss. The demigod wannabe splashes and screams. But then, the heat sinks in, and he melts into the water, admitting it feels like heaven. As they soak, Shine asks if the healing rumors are true. Evan nods. It is leagues above standard healing magic. Normal magic just fixes aches, but this water heals deep injuries and reconstructs the muscles stronger than before. Ryan is impressed by his knowledge, noting that is exactly why the legendary knights of old used this place for training camps. Shine leans in, eyes glittering. Does that mean training here boosts skill proficiency faster? Evan flashes a wicked grin. Do you want a hot spring in our city now? Shine nods aggressively. He is all in. Later, the trio steps out in matching blue robes. Evan notes the design players used to complain they looked too Japanese. So, the devs patched it to a generic East Asian style. He finds it funny, since this world shouldn't have Earth culture at all. Ryan chimes in with a surprise. These robes look exactly like the traditional garb of his homeland. He suggests the town founders might be his countrymen. Evan blinks. Someone actually knows the deep lore behind these clothes? Suddenly, Beloit appears, asking how they found the hot springs. But before he can answer, a new challenger approaches. A white-haired boy barges in, puffing out his chest and boasting about his own greatness. He declares himself Crovan Ferrati, son of the Grand Duke. Evan immediately recognizes the script. The only NPC in the entire game who introduces himself unprompted, a crucial side character, and the eldest son of a royal family. When questioned, Crow snaps, demanding to know who dared speak his full name. But his rage evaporates the moment he spots Marquis Sheridan. His face goes pale and he stammers an apology. He insists the girl did nothing wrong, he only approached because he was captivated by her stunning beauty. Our protagonist watches calmly. He knows this kid grows up to be a top-tier mage swordsman. Better to let his father handle the diplomacy than risk a social blunder. The Marquis nods, acknowledging Belos's charm. But his grip tightens on Crow's shoulder. Did you touch her? The boy frantically shakes his head, no. Belois apologizes for the mess, but Evan cuts in with a soft reassurance, calling her pretty. She blushes with a thankful smile. Finally, the Marquis introduces Evan as his second son, shocking the arrogance right out of Crow. Our boy executes a flawless bow. I am Evan de Chateau, second son of the Sheridan house. Crow asks if Belois belongs to him personally. Evan nods. He hired her himself. Do you still have business with my staff? The kid has guts. He admits it freely, calling her the prettiest girl in existence, and turns to the Marquis. He boldly asks for permission to challenge Evan to a duel. The prize? The hand of the beautiful Belois. Crovan Ferrati points an accusatory finger at Evan. Our boy sighs. Is this guy stuck in a medieval romance novel? The Marquis just laughs, calling Crow a real man. But as the challenger opens his mouth, the Marquis cuts him off instantly. To Evan's absolute horror, the Marquis actually gave his blessing. The young master stood frozen in disbelief, questioning his father's sanity. He cleared his throat, his voice firm. Bella was a person, not a trophy to be claimed. He refused to treat her dignity as a prize in their petty squabble. Crow shifted his stance, proposing a new wager. If victory was his, Bella would be liberated and given the choice to serve him of her own free will. Caught off guard by the logic, Evan nodded his assent, respecting her autonomy. Suddenly, the Marquis intervened with a strict decree: no weapons, and absolutely no magic. Only raw hand-to-hand combat would decide this clash. Crow accepted with arrogant confidence. The Marquis raised his hand, signaling the duel to begin immediately. Leaning in, he whispered a final warning to his son to go easy. After all, Crow wasn't a seasoned knight captain just yet. Evan stepped into the arena, eyes locked on his challenger. He demanded one condition before the first blow, that neither would harbor a grudge, no matter the outcome. Crow accepted without a second thought. The protagonist slammed his foot down, earth trembling as he settled into an unbreakable stance. As Ryan and Shine watched with bated breath, the challenger erupted with a blinding blue aura. He surged forward, closing the distance in an explosive burst of speed. Evan chose to evade, testing his reflexes against the onslaught. The moment the strike missed, he saw his window and drove a counterblow straight into the opening. The impact sent Crow flying like a ragdoll. He crashed to the floor, lying motionless in stunned silence. Evan looked down, puzzled by the devastating result. Shine had to spell it out. He had simply hit the target. Yet, our skeptical hero couldn't believe it was that simple, pressing for a real explanation. Only after Shine broke it down did the victory sink in, and the Marquis declared him the undisputed winner. The protagonist's mind raced back to Crow's legendary origins. He recalled the boy's dual training from childhood, a terrifying fusion of high-tier magic and swordsmanship. Ideally, that combination created a monster. But his fatal flaw was relying too heavily on magic, neglecting the raw physical foundation of combat. Evan laughed nervously, claiming it was pure luck that mana was banned. But the Marquis wasn't having it, insisting his son won, simply because he was the superior warrior. Still, Evan played the humble card. He argued that Crow's magic mastery was supreme, and without it, the duel was hardly a fair measure. His modesty only earned him more admiration from his father. Ryan and Shine, however, noted his dense lack of self-awareness. Just then, Bella stepped forward, her eyes shining with praise. She offered a delicate handkerchief to wipe his brow. Though ironically, the battle had ended so instantly, he hadn't even broken a sweat. Evan accepted the gesture with gratitude. Across the room, Ryan's holy magic flared, stirring the defeated Crow back from the realm of unconsciousness. The boy sprang to his feet, fully restored. Evan couldn't help but marvel at the terrifying efficiency of Ryan's healing arts. Humbled, Crow admitted his total defeat. Evan tried to comfort him, praising his initial movement, calling it truly spectacular. He insisted victory only came from the strict rules and blind luck. Crow agreed, but his pride forced him to add that he hadn't even shown his true power yet. He demanded a rematch, a duel without shackles. Our protagonist immediately shut him down. Evan saw zero benefit in fighting him again. But Crow was relentless, vowing to return once his confidence and strength were restored. In the quiet aftermath, Evan realized the madness of it all. He had gambled his life on a whim. Now he was entangled with the powerful Ferrati family, a dangerous web he had never intended to step into. Shine stepped up. offering to silence Crow if he became a nuisance. Evan told him to save his energy, but inwardly praised his butler's lethal loyalty. The Marquis spotted Count Melthor and decided formalities were in order. He dismissed the group to rest, but commanded his son to remain by his side. Evan groaned in protest, but his father remained firm. Being an aristocrat wasn't just luxury, it was a burden of duty. He had to build alliances to protect their world. The young master understood the gravity of his station, yet he dreaded every second of dealing with the Ferrati clan. As they approached, Melthor greeted the Marquis with warmth, receiving a polite assurance of good health in return. The Marquis turned his charm to Mrs. Ferrati, praising her timeless beauty. She accepted the compliment with grace, before shifting her piercing gaze toward our protagonist. She marveled at how handsome he had grown, asking if he retained any memory of her. He offered a polite, diplomatic nod, claiming a faint recollection. He began a formal greeting, but she cut him off with a smile, insisting on the familiarity of Mrs. Ferrati. The Marquis noted that Evan's eyes mirrored his own. Meanwhile, Mrs. Ferrati calculated his age, realizing he was the perfect match for her daughter. She summoned Alicia to the front. The girl stepped forward with elegance, offering a flawless greeting to the Marquis. Evan froze. She never held the knife, yet she was always the root cause of his doom. Oblivious, the Marquis simply praised her stunning appearance. She curtsied in thanks. Then, Melthor turned to the Marquis, his expression turning serious. Did he remember their ancient pact? With a knowing grin, the Marquis replied, "The eldest must lead the family, freeing them from that specific bond." But yes, the memory remained fresh. The plan was always to unite their second or third children in marriage. Melthor laughed heartily, teasing the young master for his bashful silence. Alicia formally presented herself, a picture of nobility. Evan hesitated, his voice trembling slightly, as he gave his full name, the weight of destiny crushing down on him. There was no mistake. Alicia von Ferrati, his betrothed, the engagement that bound her to reside within the Sheridan estate. In the original story, she would meet the protagonist of the Dungeon City, a fateful encounter that led her to betray her fiancé, pouring all her support into another man. That betrayal drove her fiancé to despair and ultimate suicide. She was the architect of his greatest endings, though, he had to admit, his past self's womanizing certainly didn't help his case. She might be his fiancé, but thanks to this cursed game logic, Alicia is basically a walking, talking game over screen. Their parents cooed over the couple like fangirls, calling it destiny, completely oblivious to Evan's internal panic attack. Later, the Marquis asked about the trip. Evan praised the springs, though he noted the waters were deadly, literally tempting fate itself. His mind flashed back to a game route where he drowned just because he relaxed a little too hard. What a lame way to die. So when his dad suggested another dip, Evan agreed, but dropped a bomb. Why don't we just build a paradise in our own backyard? The suggestion hung in the air. The Marquis stroked his chin, admitting it sounded nice, but it wasn't that simple. You can't just dig a hole and hope for the best. You need the perfect geological blessing. Boiling water is easy, but a true hot spring? That's a miracle of nature, practically impossible to force into existence. Without the magical buffs, it's just bathwater. Evan nodded along, playing the obedient son while his gears turned. Then he struck, asking innocent questions about how dungeons warp reality. The Marquis' eyes lit up, sensing a teaching moment. He explained that legendary artifacts possess enough energy to rewrite the laws of nature around them, or when a catastrophic beast or a god-tier mage leaks enough mana to twist the very earth into a dungeon. Though honestly, the exact magical science is still a headache for even the smartest scholars. Evan smirked internally. So, could a supreme artifact force a hot spring to spawn? His father paused, mind blown. Theoretically, yes, if the item had the right elemental affinity, but who knows how many centuries that would take. Evan leaned in. A healing spring wouldn't just be luxury, it would be a revolution for their economy. Dungeon raiders would recover instantly. The Marquis narrowed his eyes at his scheming son. Boy, what are you plotting? Cut to midnight. Under Evan's command, shovels hit dirt. The workers were skeptical, but our young master was confident. There's treasure down there, he insisted. They tried to ask for his source, probably a wiki page in his head, but were cut off. Hit! Ryan yelled. They hauled up a massive ancient stone slab. Bingo! Fast forward 1 month later, Evan returned, ready to conquer the market. His father made Eric take notes, sensing a masterclass in capitalism. Location, 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 Evan preached. To drain the explorers' wallets, they had to be right next to the dungeon entrance. Close to the pharmacy for synergy, smack on the main road for visibility. Go big or go home. No tiny franchises. We need a massive, premium resort. And the entry fee? Oh, it's going to be astronomically expensive. It has to scream luxury. Marcus finally caught on to the demographic targeting. So, the pharmacy is for the common folk. But this bathhouse is to milk the rich explorers? Exactly. Evan argued the price was fair. It's pay to win. Instant healing means they can grind dungeons faster. Eric was awestruck. It's perfect. But won't the Holy Temple get salty about us stealing their healing business? Our scheming protagonist waved it off. Relax, we're best buddies with the clergy. Even the priests will be lining up for a soak. In his head, he knew this would crush the famous Steema Springs. In Demon War 3, a personal healing fountain was the ultimate cheat code for survival. He wasn't doing this for money, he was doing it to live. Plus, they had the secret weapon. Mr. Bernard. Speaking of the devil, the alchemist barged in. Hey kid, hands off the goods. He thought Evan was in the capital for politics, but no, he came back obsessed with bathwater. Bernard eyed the massive artifact. Is this the rock? Evan grinned. Showtime, Bernard. It wasn't just a rock. It was a fragment of a dungeon core. Powerful enough to warp reality, but too broken to spawn monsters. Evan laughed. We can't let this go to waste, right? Tell me, Bernard, do you enjoy a good soak? Eric chuckled, knowing Bernard's obsession with health. The alchemist inspected the core with intense, manic focus. I can't alter the core itself, Bernard muttered. But it makes the perfect engine for an infinite hot spring. With my alchemy and some medical herbs, I can turbocharge the healing properties. His eyes burned with scientific passion. We'll build a bathhouse that puts Steema to shame, Bernard declared, but I want a lifetime free pass. Deal, Evan agreed instantly. Free baths for the staff. Then, he spun around to face the Marquis with one last request. I need land next door. We're building a training ground for the dungeon knights. The Marquis blinked. Why there? Train until they drop. Heal in the bath. Repeat. The infinite grind loop. The Marquis realized the genius immediately. Evan smiled innocently, but his mind was calculating. Stronger knights meant a human shield against his own death flags. No time to waste, Bernard shouted, dragging Evan along. You're helping me mix the herbs. The bathhouse arc begins now. The construction site was a symphony of chaos and creation. Timber moved, hammers sang, and there was Evan, conducting the orchestra of labor like a maestro. As workers lugged massive beams, past columns etched with glowing seals, Bernard the alchemist was deep in the zone, scrutinizing their magical engine. But there was a snag. He warned that a single stone's output was pathetic. It couldn't power the beast. But our main character wasn't settling for half measures. He wanted perfection. Bernard preached about solid foundations before cutting to the chase. This setup is trash. They needed more juice specifically, an extra artifact to partner with the Mana Stone. He demanded a Mana Aggregate, a legendary loop of infinite energy to keep the facility's heart beating without pause. Bernard slapped a number on it, at least 5. But our boy didn't flinch. He immediately recognized the mechanic as the classic Mana Tank process. Bernard blinked, stunned. He admitted it would skyrocket efficiency. But then the tears came. He'd traded away all his old gear ages ago. Where'd they go? Evan asked. When the old man confessed, they were dust. Our young master casually pulled out a treasure trove from his own pocket dimension. Use these, he announced, flashing loot he'd hauled all the way from the capital. Bernard side-eyed him hard. Did you rob the royal vault? But Evan just shrugged. Relax. I swept through the city's jewelers. Finally satisfied, the alchemist nodded. The plan was a go. Ever the opportunist, our boy volunteered to help. After all, what better way to grind his alchemy mastery? But later, the physical grind awaited. The knight captain cornered him in the yard. No skipping combat practice. This was the golden age for growth, and he wouldn't let Evan waste it. Evan nodded along, but the knight dropped a bomb he knew about the duel with the Ferrari Scion. That kid's already a martial arts celebrity, the captain noted, his voice grim. Headhunters will be coming for you. Evan tried to play it cool, claiming it was luck, but the captain wasn't buying that humble act for a second. To protect the family rep, he offered a gift, a rare skill straight from the depths of a dungeon. He wasted no time unveiling the martial art, a technique designed to crush the battlefield. Heaven's weight. Evan watched, mesmerized, as raw energy coalesced around the captain's fist. A heavy, swirling aura wrapped around him like a suffocating blanket. The captain began his lecture on the skill's true essence. It was about infusing every motion with the mass of a mountain. He claimed the young master could wield this with terrifying efficiency. Can you even teach that? Our boy asked. The captain's answer? A charging tackle. Evan was forced into a panic defense immediately. Post-beatdown, our protagonist face-planted onto a desk. But there was no rest for the wicked Mabel marched in. It was etiquette time. He begged for a timeout, but she crossed her arms. Shine got a bracelet. Bella got earrings. And her? Zero. Zilch. Nada. I didn't forget. He panicked. I was just waiting for the perfect moment. Smoothly, he produced a dazzling necklace. He told her to wear it with pride, not just as jewelry, but as the mascot of the brothers' pharmacy and the symbol of his trust. Her smile could have outshined the sun. She clutched it tight, vowing to cherish it for eternity. Even as he played it down, she just laughed, pure joy bubbling over, but the grind never stopped. Etiquette lessons devoured his mornings. Afternoons were lost to alchemy at the bathhouse site, and his nights, consumed by the brutal Heaven's Weight practice with the Knight Captain. He even squeezed in slime training. The little blobbies floated above his palm. Evan grinned like a proud papa, seeing 4 materialize at once. But the mana cost was steep. He collapsed onto the grass, totally drained. But he forced his shaking legs to stand. There was no time to bleed. The brothers' bathhouse was nearly ready for its debut. Back in the yard, the captain barked orders. "Strike harder. Put your soul into the weight." Evan obeyed. As the captain nodded in approval, he revealed the secret sauce. That oppressive heaviness was the core of Heaven's Weight. Once Evan mastered that feeling, he could inject mana directly into the impact, turning his fists into wrecking balls. "You're a combat genius," the captain admitted, scratching his head. "Honestly, I wasn't even 50% sure this was teachable." "Uncertainty isn't an excuse," our boy shouted. Bolos glided in to save the mood, handing him a towel, which he took with a grateful sigh. Finally, D-Day. The brothers' bathhouse threw open its doors. While the Marquis admired the structure, our protagonist noted the architectural clash. Stemma's style was heavily oriental, but Evan had gone rogue, insisting on a Western aesthetic for that exotic flair. Then, Shine froze. A bizarre metal box caught his eye. They had arrived at the masterpiece, the vending machine. Evan turned into a tour guide. Insert silver coin, pick your poison, press the button, and boom, magic. Clunk. A bottle of coffee milk dropped into the tray. Shine stepped up to try the sorcery for himself. As the tour continued, Evan geeked out over the specs, space-expanding artifacts, and cooling magic running the whole custom rig. In the changing rooms, Bernard wiped sweat from his brow, recalling the nightmare of assembling this beast. "It better taste as good as you said," he grumbled. But Evan just smirked. He promised absolute satisfaction. The age of modern convenience had officially hit the fantasy world. Shine stands in awe comparing the scorching heat to the legendary springs of Stella, revealing the secret is a colossal artifact powering the tubs. Its sole purpose is to amplify the mystical properties of the water and purify the soul, while Bernard steps in to add his masterpiece. A potent herbal concentrate infused daily to push the effects beyond human limits. He also notes the vending machine standing in the corner was a stroke of genius from our protagonist. Marky bets his life it will be a sensation, while Shine hesitates with a burning question. Will Bella and the noble ladies truly enjoy this? Ryan nods with absolute certainty, while Bernard turns his gaze wondering if Evan is satisfied. Our boy smirks, declaring that their success is inevitable. However, the veteran alchemist raises a finger, noting one critical flaw. Evan raises a brow, asking for the details, but suddenly Mabel rushes to the entrance as a roar erupts from the gathering crowd. They scream that a single silver coin should buy a king's feast, claiming the pricing is madness and a scam no sane person would pay for. As the protests swell like a storm, an explorer demands a discount, while another crosses his arms, refusing to enter the establishment. The mob chants in unison, swearing a boycott, terrified by their rage. Mabel looks to Evan, but he remains as calm as a still lake. Just then, a heavy bag of gold crashes onto the counter, and Evan smiles, knowing the true nature of the city's elite explorers. These are warriors who burn a gold coin just to teleport between the 30th floor of the dungeon, and he knows their mindset. If they drop 20 silver coins here, the results will silence every doubt. Inside the steam, an explorer gasps, muttering that this power is insane. He feels his depleted mana and stamina surging back instantly, fueled by the mystical herbs, while another man widens his eyes. It feels as if his very soul is being scrubbed clean, and he declares it worth a fortune. Suddenly, a giant figure rises from the mist. He barks an order to his subordinates to inform the guild immediately that no one enters the dungeon without soaking in the brothers' bathhouse first. Access is denied to the unclean. Evan observes, noting that dungeon efficiency has just skyrocketed, while one man stares at the water in his palms. Calling it a miracle, another claims the gods themselves must have brewed this to wash away their sins. Evan knows the truth. Eventually, every soul in the city will admit that 20 silver coins is a small price to pay for salvation. He adds that once the rumors of this power spread, even the stingiest misers will be forced to crawl through these doors at least once. Our boy explains the secret technique. This is not just about resting. It is about restoring the fundamental foundation of the body. It guarantees survival in the abyss. Evan points out the brutal reality that a massive gap is about to open up. A divide between those who use the bath and those who do not, with the non-users destined for elimination. Meanwhile, 2 warriors soak in bliss, praising the facility as a sanctuary. One man shakes his head, realizing that 20 silver coins might not even cover the cost of these materials, while another calls it a divine blessing at the dungeon gates. A guild leader shouts a command, asking if every single member has visited the brothers' bathhouse. The raid party roars in affirmation, fired up to conquer the 40th floor. It is time to catch up to the frontliners. The Yellow Drake Guild charges into the darkness with renewed vigor. Bystanders watch with envy. One explains that, inside those walls, nobles and commoners are equal before the raid. They bless the Marquise's wisdom, while others clench their fists, vowing to visit once they gain enough strength. Evan watches the shift. The veteran explorers are clearing floors with terrifying speed. Thanks to the bathhouse, even rookies are training harder, fueled by the dream. The high entry fee and exclusive elixirs only add to the mystique, making entrance a badge of honor, a privilege reserved for the elite. Later, the Marquise sits in his office, reviewing the staggering reports. It is unfolding exactly as Evan predicted, with gold flowing like a river. He realizes the bathhouse profits alone eclipse all four brothers' pharmacy branches. Even combined, they cannot compete for the frontline explorers. This is a revolution. He considers it even more suited to the lower floors, targeting adventurers and slum dwellers who cannot afford the exorbitant fees of the priesthood, since the pharmacy caters to a different crowd. The profit gap is simply the law of nature. He also notes that the capital poured into the bathhouse dwarfs the pharmacy's budget. The Marquis knows this gold came from a personal war chest. He recalls the explosive outrage of his vassals, a flashback to a chaotic council where a man slams his fist on the mahogany desk, trembling with fury, screaming they were barred from investing. He accuses the Marquis of favoritism toward Evan, preaching about loyalty but demanding a share of the pie, only to be told to silence himself. The Marquis speaks with ice in his voice. He never invested a single coin. The project only accepts funds when necessary. Then the truth drops, revealing Evan provided both the divine alchemy and the personal fortune to build it. The accuser leans back, struck dumb by the revelation, admitting he never imagined a child could hold such wealth. Evan sighs, musing that these vassals are consumed by the hunger for gold. He gestures toward Randolph as the prime example of avarice. While the Marquis makes his final decree, the bathhouse belongs to Evan alone. It is a fortress, untouchable by their greedy hands. He notes that vultures always circle where money bleeds, yet he cannot help but praise the boy. With a heavy sigh, he wonders if Evan is shouldering the weight of the world too early. But our protagonist simply smiles, assuring him that this is nothing. In the silence of his mind, he repeats the mantra. Every calculated move is a desperate step away from his own death flag. Then, he unveils the master plan. A contribution membership system, creating a hierarchy based on blood and sweat shed in the dungeon. He spreads the tiered cards like a winning hand, explaining how the allure of higher rank will drive adventurers to their limits. It is a strategy to fortify both the bathhouse and the city's defenses. Mabel notes it could ignite a fire in the citizens, and Evan nods. He declares this will forge a bastion that does not crumble without a chosen hero. Mabel admits the scale of his vision is beyond her, yet she insists his presence is the true keystone. She confesses she cannot imagine a future for this city without him, but Evan refuses to be a martyr or watch his home burn. Knowing a world tethered to a single protagonist invites ruin, he vows to shatter that fate. He will build a new order where the city stands tall on its own merits, securing its survival and his own life. Back within the pharmacy, Evan reveals the fruits of his grinding: shimmering potions, flawless gems, and refined ingots. Master Bernard scrutinizes a gem, unable to hide his approval of the brat's rapid growth. Evan seizes the moment to tease him. He cheekily suggests he handle the closing shift. Bernard's silence is heavy before he fires back a sharp retort, all while Hannah observes the dynamic. Outside, the gruff alchemist finally dismisses his staff, offering rare praise for their exhaustion. The grind is over. Two weary workers extend an invitation to the bathhouse, a reward the old master readily accepts. Hannah extends the offer to the young master as well, and Evan agrees to wash away the day's fatigue. Inside, two familiar faces await. Submerged in the steam, they confirm their training is complete. Shine reports with the confidence of a warrior. He has mastered every technique missed during their time in the capital. Evan turns his gaze to Ryan, who humbly admits he is trailing behind, but he is absorbing every lesson from Shine. The swordsman adds that he still has much to learn from the discipline of a holy knight. Ryan confesses his struggle. He has built a fortress of physical strength but lacks the refined technique of weapon arts. The young master cuts through his doubt instantly. Do not compare your path to his, he assures, seeing the hidden potential. He explains that Ryan simply needs to fill the void in his arsenal, highlighting the untapped versatility of the shield arts. Realization dawns in the trainee's eyes. The alchemist declares that the true hell training for the shield begins tomorrow. Everything is already prepared. As Evan departs through the mist, a melodic voice calls out to him. It is a reunion. Servina and Hannah approach him after a long separation. He greets Servina, asking if she frequents the springs. She confirms it is her sanctuary. Evan nods to the healing waters but warns, "You know chugging beer cancels out the divine benefits, right?" She laughs and asks about his entourage. Ryan steps forward, introducing himself with the stiffness of a soldier training to be a shield. He vows to be worthy of standing beside his liege. Hannah represents the pharmacy, while Servina reveals she serves the temple. Later, in the dust of the training yard, our boy unveils a massive slab of iron from storage. Ryan accepts it with gratitude. He swears a solemn oath to protect his master with this shield, but the protagonist immediately shakes his head. Absolutely not. This thing is trash, Evan states bluntly. It is strictly a training tool. Use this in a real deathmatch, and we both die. Ryan is bewildered. Why train with a liability? Evan warns him again. Relying on this hunk of metal for protection is a suicide mission. When Ryan asks for the logic, Evan drops a heavy question. Have you ever heard of cursed artifacts? Ryan flinches. Evan explains the dark lore of items that drain their owners. Ryan looks at the shield with horror, wondering if it is one of them. Evan shakes his head. No. He explains that sometimes, perfectly functional artifacts are misunderstood as cursed, and thus, they are discarded. He admits that while he knows its hidden stats from his past life, in this reality, things are murkier. Assessing artifacts here is a gamble. Ryan presses him, demanding to know the shield's true nature. Evan grins. The Echo Shield. Block 1 attack, and your body suffers the impact of 2. Ryan panics. That sounds exactly like a curse. Evan clarifies the exploit. Blocking 1 strike counts as blocking 2. It doubles your shield skill proficiency instantly. Combine that with the Iron Wall Knight's full plate armor, and your efficiency skyrockets 4-fold. Add this specific necklace, 8 times the growth speed. Evan tells him to stop overthinking the math and just feel the grind. The shield, the armor, the necklace, they are bugged items, glitches in reality. He urges Ryan to equip them. Ryan hesitates, looking lost, until a beastly roar tears from his throat. He charges, intercepting invisible blows with the heavy shield. Evan notes his terrifying adaptation speed, but points to the blood already trickling down his side. Heal yourself as you fight, he commands. Golden divine energy erupts. Ryan chants to the battle god, knitting his flesh back together even as he holds the line. A green aura intensifies around the shield, growing brighter with every second. Evan presses the attack, his own body wreathed in mana. And then, the necklace activates. The item designed to drain mana suddenly unleashes a chaotic storm of wind arrows. Instead, it launches them directly at Ryan. It barely consumes a whisper of mana, a growth-type artifact that evolves alongside its master. Overpowered, the armor is a glitched, legendary item, flagged by a coding error to function as a shield. It gathered dust in storage, too broken to use, yet too valuable to scrap. Worn normally, it is useless, leaking damage like a sieve. But if the user braces themselves, taking the stance of a guardian, the system recognizes it as a second shield. Paired with a real buckler, it is like raising 2 iron walls at once. Blocking potential is instantly doubled. Combined with the Echo Shield skill, the synergy is god tier. It is the ultimate grind for defensive mastery. It effortlessly deflects the summoned arrows. A perfect, infinite loop for honing shield arts. A dark grin spreads across Evan's face. Perfection. Leaving Ryan to his automated training hell, Evan turns his gaze to Shine. Now, he says with a menacing aura, it is time for your hell training. A chill runs down Shine's spine. This will be no ordinary drill. Evan reminds him of the past 2 years. You have survived the grind, haven't you? Your instincts are sharp enough to dance with knights. Shine snaps back. Traumatized. I didn't fight them by choice. They stabbed me in the back. Details, Evan dismisses. That desperate struggle awakened your senses. It honed his divine sight and combat intuition to a razor's edge. Shine grumbles about that cheat-like butler skill. The young master's expression softens slightly. In the beginning, I just wanted you all to survive this harsh world. But now, you are monsters ready to conquer a dungeon. Yet, Shine clenches his fist. He knows the gap between them is still an ocean. Amidst the training, he whispers the truth. I am still too weak to stand by your side. Evan does not sugarcoat it. That is the burden of a demigod's potential. Our boy unsheathes his twin blades, the steel glinting with malice. Behold, the bloody shadow technique. The mechanic is simple yet brutal. The more blood that bathes these blades, the faster the user becomes. It even devours life force to restore your stamina, Evan smirks. A perfect art for a chaotic rogue like you, designed for slaughtering armies single-handedly. He explains that this is a growth-type mastery. It evolves with every drop spilled. With time, it becomes a calamity. But our protagonist interrupts. Wait, does that mean I need to go on a killing spree to level it up? The alchemist shakes his head. No, you fool. Just coat the blades, shine pales. Are you telling me to become a serial killer? Calm down, murderer. Evan pulls out an inventory's worth of glass bottles filled with crimson fluid. Shine blinks. Is that actual blood? Freshly harvested, Evan confirms casually. Mostly goblin vintage, but I have a variety. Each bottle holds the essence of a different beast. Bloody Shadow grants godlike agility, but the recoil will tear your muscles apart if you are weak. It is a double-edged sword, too dangerous for a child's body. I plan to let you grind in the dungeon first, but you. Evan eyes him with pride. You have grown into a monster faster than my calculations predicted. The youth nods, acknowledging the stamina recovery baths nearby. With those buffs, I can speedrun this mastery. Evan raises a finger. Correction. It is not about the volume of blood you bathe in. The system checks for variety within a time limit. Combo multipliers depend on unique blood types, and you must keep moving to maintain the buff. Shine looks at the rows of bottles. So that is why you brought a buffet of samples. The young master grins like a devil. Apply in this sequence. Then sprint 100 meters, back and forth. Repeat. It is the optimal grind route. Shine freezes, his soul leaving his body. Wait. Running around with bloody knives? People will think I'm a psycho. Evan tilts his head. Would you prefer your old, slow routine, faced with the choice between weakness and looking like a maniac? Shine panics. Fine. I'll do it. Just give me the goblin juice. Meanwhile, our boy's mind drifts to Beloa. She always vanishes after her shift. Lamp training, she claims. His gamer instincts are tingling. That is definitely a lie. He never pried before, trusting her loyalty. But the dungeon is unforgiving. He needs to know her true stats. Time to uncover this hidden quest. 2 hours of searching. He checks every spawn point she might use. Nothing. Zero presence. If she is hiding a secret skill, she wouldn't use a common area. Suddenly, a voice pierces his thoughts. It is Madame Miriam. She stands there like a queen, flanked by maids and holding little Liz. She spots her son scurrying like a rat. What are you hunting for, my son? Evan stiffens and bows perfectly. Forgive my haste, mother. Have you seen Beloa? I have a critical party matter to discuss, but she has vanished from the map. The lady raises an elegant eyebrow. Oh? Are you still in the dark? Redding is currently instructing her. Tea ceremonies, flower arrangement, high society etiquette. Evan's jaw drops. Why on earth would you teach a combat mage how to arrange flowers? Miriam smiles warmly. Because she is to be your mistress, of course. I am grooming her to be worthy of your bed. Evan's brain crashes. Mother, I don't even have a wife yet. And she is 9 years old. 9. Miriam ticks. Taking a mere maid? How scandalous. That is why we must upgrade her class to mistresses first. The very idea of accepting the blood-eyed witch as a mistress was a death flag he refused to trigger, forcing our protagonist into deep reflection. It had been 3 long years since he last shared tea with his mother, and a sudden realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. Belua's skills were leveling up at a terrifying pace, suggesting that her training with his mother was unlocking a hidden, special ability. Just as the butler and headmaid had awakened their own powers in this world, consistent grinding over months often evolved into a legendary skill. But while mastery usually required blood, sweat, and years of noble etiquette, Belua's mana capacity had skyrocketed overnight. Shaking off his disbelief, he marched straight to the door, knocking with the authority of a man on a mission before announcing his presence. His mother opened the door, the young girl hiding in her shadow, as Evan turned his sharp gaze to Redden and asked why she concealed her status as a high-ranking mage. She met his intense stare without flinching, silently acknowledging that her son had finally pierced through the veil of her deception. Evan demanded the truth about her hidden identity, questioning if his father knew, to which Redden admitted that while he didn't know for sure, he had likely pieced it together, despite the Sheridan family's infamous reputation for having absolutely zero magical talent. He countered by mentioning that Eric had somehow defied the odds to become a magical prodigy, prompting a challenge from his mother. The protagonist agreed to lay out his evidence, listing 4 undeniable truths, starting with the aphoranic tea she and Belua were casually sipping. Second was the notebook by the teacups, a high-tier artifact designed to encrypt secrets, and third was the ancient lamp pulsating with faint light. This proved she had been channeling mana mere moments before his arrival, and finally, Belua's monstrous growth rate was impossible through basic training alone. He declared that it could only mean one thing. His mother was personally imparting secret arts to the girl. Redden smirked, impressed by his ability to analyze their progress, noting that he held secrets of his own. But Evan had one final card to play. He pointed out that while time had etched lines onto his father's face, she remained frozen in time, untouched by age. The atmosphere shifted instantly as she stepped forward, her aura intensifying as she warned him to listen very carefully. She was simply youthful, nothing more. When he quickly nodded in terror, she asked if he knew the lore of witches, and he recalled the common definition of women who wield magic. She expressed relief at his ignorance before beginning to explain the true, terrifying nature of what a witch actually was. He realized she wasn't speaking of a job class, but a hidden species. She described them as female demi-humans, beings whose earth-shattering abilities were inherited through bloodlines, blessed with infinite mana and absolute control. She spoke of an ancient legend where God created them and concealed them among humanity to protect the world, though her knowledge ended there. His gamer brain immediately processed the data, categorizing them as demigods, while Redden continued her story. She had traveled the globe, masking her true power, until she fell hopelessly in love with his father and settled down. After marriage, she retired from worldly chaos, choosing to live the quiet life of a human named Redden de Chateau. Internally, Evan frantically searched his memories of every Demon War game and downloadable content he had played in his past life. But the puzzle pieces didn't fit. Not once had the developers mentioned witches being a separate demi-human race. He wondered how such crucial lore could be missing until a chilling realization hit him like a truck. This was content from a sequel. Unless the Earth was destroyed, it was standard practice for a new game to expand the universe. But he never expected to be living inside an unreleased game. Even as Redden continued to unravel the mystery, she explained that no new witch was born between her and his father, admitting that Evan carried only a trace of witch blood. Because he was not a woman, she theorized that his lack of magical talent was a side effect of his diluted lineage. She recalled discovering Balua, a child radiating the potential to become a true witch, while our protagonist realized Balua was essentially a demigod. He wondered if there was a connection between demi-humans, witches, and demigods, realizing she would gain power far beyond anything she ever possessed in Demon War 3, and Redden confirmed this was the reason for their current secrecy. She asked if her explanation satisfied him, and while he agreed, she complimented his sharp intuition with a knowing smile. But then, she turned the tables, demanding his secrets in return, pointing out that fair is fair in the world of information. He realized that Demon War 5 might actually exist, but without any knowledge of it, he was flying blind. He decided it was safer to ally with his mother, the connection to this unknown sequel, planning his next move carefully to avoid death flags. Our boy began to spin his tale, framing his future knowledge as a prophetic dream, while the scene shifted to the manor grounds. Servants whispered about his strange habits and intense training routines, until he ran into Shine in the garden. Shine attempted to break his composure by spinning a hilarious story about the gardener, testing his master's resolve. The young master called this Immortality Project Number 5, Poker Face, a mission to suppress all emotion, though he admitted he was a novice, because a few days earlier, Balua had told him that his smile was a dangerous weapon that truly made people's hearts flutter. A sudden, clumsy stumble. The porcelain cup shattered, sending hot tea splashing across the floor, but as she scrambled to help him, a bolt of lightning struck his mind. His 12th birthday debut was looming like a dark storm cloud. He admitted the grim truth. If he dared to smile now, the death flags would multiply until they pierced the heavens. Evan scoffed at Shine's plea to rest. Training could not stop. In this world, a noble's 12th birthday was a battlefield of etiquette and survival. The butler shuddered, recalling the sheer scale of Master Eric's debut. It had been a sea of foreign dignitaries and guildmasters, all judging every move. But to our protagonist, that crowd meant only one thing: women. And in his fragile existence, romance was just another word for doom. He needed a mask of ice. Absolute indifference was his only shield. Shine, however, just could not understand the young master's terror. Why not just be friends, like with Mabel or Balua? Evan shut that thought down instantly. In this genre, there is no such thing as just friends. Suddenly, Bella arrived, carrying a sealed envelope from the palace. The moment his eyes scanned the text, his blood turned to ice. A scream of pure denial tore from his throat. Why was the crown writing to him? Bella quickly tried to explain the situation. The Marquis had already seen it. Evan gripped her shoulders, desperate for a sliver of hope. Please, tell him it was not from the person he feared most. But her silence spoke volumes. The nightmare had become reality. The king himself was coming to the party. The Marquis roared like a lion, threatening to reject the royal proposal. But the pressure was mounting. Evan's mother stepped in, her aura sharp and dangerous. Their second son was extraordinary, she insisted. Yet the Marquis stood his ground like a mountain. The king would not have his way with this family. Because Evan had a plan. He would declare his candidacy for Dungeon Knight Captain. Shine's jaw dropped at the sudden revelation. That was the master stroke. Our boy knew the truth. The king did not want a knight, he wanted a son-in-law. A political marriage with the princess? Never. By pledging his sword to the dungeon, he would sever that red thread of fate. He swore to crush that death flag into dust. Meanwhile, the estate exploded into chaotic preparations. He cornered Mabel regarding the logistics. She sighed deeply. With the king attending, every single plan had to be scrapped and rewritten. Evan proposed a diversion to distract the royal guest, but Mabel shook her head firmly. The spotlight had to remain on the young master. She handed him the new schedule. He squinted at the paper, praying it was a joke. Mabel's nod confirmed it. Suddenly, his despair vanished. His eyes sparkled as he realized the implication. A parade of beautiful girls was coming to his party. But wait, what about the famous female minstrels he had questioned earlier? Mabel smirked with a devilish glint. They were just eager fangirls wanting to meet nobility, and she had promised them an exclusive encounter. Specifically, she promised his autograph. They bit the bait instantly. Our protagonist glared daggers at her. She had sold his soul without permission. More attention meant more death flags. Sighing, he returned to the plans. The setup was a mess. It needed his expert touch. Mabel protested that a noble should not work on his own party. He ignored her. He commanded her to ensure the performers kept the mood low-key, just quiet, atmospheric songs. Once the king arrived, Evan planned to fade into the background, but he had a brilliant idea. Split the celebration in two. Part 1 would be a stuffy ceremony for the king. Part 2 would be the real chaos. The VIPs could leave early, and the real fun would begin. Later, he stood before his loyal employees. He extended an invitation to every single one of them. No one would be left behind. Both venues were open to them. The crowd murmured nervously. Would their presence tarnish the young master's prestige? Nonsense. He would not hear of it. But there was one condition. They must wear the brothers' pharmacy uniforms to declare their status to the world. Hannah looked doubtful about the attire, but he reminded her of the stakes. With high nobility present, clear status was their protection. Even Servina was not exempt. Her priestess robes were non-negotiable. However, for the after-party, he promised her a stunning dress once the stiff nobles departed. He then turned to the old alchemist, offering a sleek suit, but Grandpa Bernard flatly refused. He wanted zero attention from the king. Evan smirked and played his trump card, the cute girls. Bernard's ears perked up. Were they truly top tier? Our boy nodded solemnly. The absolute finest beauties of the Silk Line, beauties famous across the continent. The old man grunted his agreement, but he warned that with one bother, he would vanish like smoke. Next stop, the butcher. Evan demanded he cook for the banquet. The poor man nearly had a heart attack. Cooking for royalty? The chef slammed his fist on the table. He scolded the young master for spewing such dangerous nonsense, but Evan was smooth. Only a genius could use that specific herb in cuisine. He praised the man's hidden, divine talent. This was his stage. He swore the aristocrats would lose their minds over the flavor. Slowly, the chef's resistance began to crumble. The raw appeal of open-flame cooking was irresistible. The chef's eyes blazed with determination. He vowed to cook until his last breath. Evan promised to handle the logistics. Back at the estate, Shine approached, staggering under a tower of boxes. A special delivery for the master. Evan nodded with satisfaction. The gear had arrived. Uniforms for Shine, Belua, and the rookie children under his command. He declared it loudly. Wear these at the party. Shine hesitated, confusion in his eyes. Did this mean they were being set apart from the rest? With eyes burning with resolve, our protagonist confirms the truth without hesitation. These are not merely trainees. They are the future blades of the Night Order he is destined to forge. Outside, the chaos reached a fever pitch as servants scrambled against the clock. One breathless attendant bowed to Evan, swearing that the security perimeter was absolutely impenetrable. But Belua's voice was sharp with anxiety, reminding them that impenetrable was the bare minimum. After all, the Emperor himself would soon grace them with his terrifying presence. Just as Evan questioned if the hired chefs were trustworthy, Mabel cut him off with the authority of a head maid. "Leave the logistics to me and get your face ready, young master," she commanded. A ripple of whispers tore through the crowd as the famous pharmacy girls made their entrance. How did they get an invite? One guest sneered, until a knowing voice silenced them. The young master only keeps the elite within his inner circle. Nearby, Hannah nervously asked if they truly belonged there, but Bernard simply scoffed at her worry. "This is the Marquis's domain. No one dares lay a finger on the brothers' pharmacy here." Hannah tilted her head, eyeing him suspiciously. "You sound like an aristocrat, old man." His eyes darkened with a grim warning. "Impersonating nobility carries a punishment worse than death." He shot her a sharp glare. "Watch your tongue, girl. Now, get me a drink." Meanwhile, back in the dressing room, Mabel beamed with pride. "Young master, the entire banquet hall is buzzing with your name. They are singing your praises." Shine stepped forward, his expression grave. However, rumors of the dungeon have also begun to circulate. Evan's gaze sharpened. "What are they saying?" The knight explained the grim statistics. Since the Great Change, no raid has surpassed the 45th floor. A tragic fall from the era, when heroes reached the 50th. Mabel's voice trembled with concern. Do you really intend to enter that hellhole after your birthday? Evan didn't flinch. Absolutely. But listen closely. I will enter, but I only plan to clear up to the 5th floor. The room fell dead silent, his loyal servants stunned by the modest goal. Shine realized the implication immediately. Young master, if you challenge the floor master, the Marchioness might actually faint from sheer terror. Evan shrugged casually. Honestly, my original plan was to storm the 10th floor. Shine looked like his soul was leaving his body. Sir, a boss monster guards every 5 levels. He stressed the absurdity of it. No 12-year-old in history has ever defeated the 5th floor's guardian. If father knew I aimed for the 10th, he would lock me in my room until I'm 30. Evan smirked. That is precisely why we stop at 5. And I will do it with the Night Order. And the support of Vice Captain Shine. Shine blinked, his brain rebooting. Vice Captain? Who is that? You, of course. I'm leaving the training in your hands. You can't be serious, Shine stammered. But the headmaid burst in. Preparations are complete. Evan thanked her, his demeanor shifting to that of a noble. Before leaving, he cast a glance back. Ensure what we just discussed remains a shadow in this room. She bowed deeply, sealing the secret. Evan straightened his jacket. Now, it is time to face the wolves in the party hall. Inside the grand hall, heads turned as the influential Ferrati family made their entrance. Bernard whistled low. That silver-haired child is a stunner, Hannah whispered. That is Alicia von Ferrati. Crow scanned the crowd for Belua, wondering if the young heiress would partner with Evan. But the girl looked pale, clutching her face as if fighting back a curse. Her father leaned in, voice stern yet concerned. Endure it a little longer. I will present you to Evan the moment he arrives. Crow smirked, his competitive spirit igniting. I wonder how much power Evan has amassed to be worthy of being called my rival. Alicia muttered weakly. You're lying to yourself. Crow laughed off her insult, insisting on his prowess, but the moment was cut short. The Marquis and his wife entered, radiating authority. Whispers floated about the second wife, but they were quickly answered by the crowd. She must be tending to the newborn heir. The Marquis took center stage, commanding the room with gratitude. On stage, he addressed the guests, reminiscing about the day his firstborn came of age. Then, his voice boomed across the hall. Tonight, we celebrate my second son reaching that same milestone. He gestured to the curtain, ready to unveil Evan to the world. Suddenly, Belua burst into the waiting area. Urgent news from the main gate, she gasped, leaving the young master completely bewildered. Across the hall, a heavy silence fell as a golden staff struck the floor with a deafening boom. Every eye turned toward the entrance. The doors swung open. The Emperor himself strode in, with Princess Serena in his shadow. He had arrived far earlier than fate predicted. Backstage, realization hit Evan like a lightning bolt. The king was here. In the hall, the Emperor advanced, an iron wall of armored guards flanking him. Princess Serena trailed elegantly behind. The Marquis hurried forward, bowing low but questioning the timing. Your Majesty, the ceremony has not yet begun. The ruler merely smiled, brushing off protocol as he accepted the welcome. The Marquis, suppressing his nerves, guided the supreme guest toward the stage. Regaining his composure, the Marquis raised his voice to draw the room's attention. He spread his arms wide, a father presenting his legacy. I congratulate my son on his 12th birthday. Evan stepped into the light, vowing to honor his bloodline and serve the citizens with his life. But the Marquis's eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. And how, exactly, will you bring this honor? Evan paused, letting the tension build, before dropping the bombshell. I shall establish the Dungeon Night Order. His voice rang clear. I will lead as captain and become the shield of this city. Murmurs erupted like a storm. Wasn't that order disbanded decades ago? Why would a noble son lead the charge himself? The Emperor raised a single hand, silencing the room instantly. He looked down at the boy. Is this a desperate cry for attention? Or perhaps a foolish, rash decision? The Marquis stepped in, his voice firm. No, Your Majesty. My son does not flee from reality. He has chosen the path of the dungeon. He turned to Evan. Is this true? It is, Evan replied, locking eyes with the king. I am prepared to bear the weight of the captain's title. He smiled confidently. In fact, the recruitment has already begun. With all eyes fixed on Shine, Ryan, and Belua, whispers ripple through the court that the young master is far too young for the dungeon. But our protagonist stands firm, declaring that he will shatter their doubts and descend into the abyss alongside his loyal retainers. With Ryan and Belua by his side, he boldly vows to return with a trophy that screams impossible, the severed head of the 5th floor's master. The entire hall freezes in disbelief. His father, the Marquis, reacts with pure shock, pointing out the harsh reality that the boy is still 6 years away from coming of age. Evan acknowledges the rule, yet he insists that breaking tradition is the only way to forge the people's trust and prove his unyielding determination. Before the Marquis can crush this dream, a heavy footstep echoes as Michael intervenes. He vouches for Shine, Ryan, and Balua, and the crowd gasps, instantly recognizing the legendary Michael D. Arlock, captain of the Iron Wall Knights. He reveals that he has personally tempered these three in the fires of training, asserting they possess the strength to stand shoulder to shoulder with veterans. With absolute conviction, he assures the gathering that their talent and skill are more than enough to conquer the fifth floor's horrors. Across the hall, the Marquis's fury boils over. He demands to know why a knight captain would endorse sending his precious son into the jaws of death. Michael calmly proposes a trial by combat, a duel to prove their worth, leaving the final verdict in the hands of the Marquis. The king, eyes gleaming with intrigue, commands our boy to demonstrate his power at once. Evan accepts the challenge without hesitation. The tension is palpable as the two groups face off in the center of the Great Hall. Michael steps forward to dictate the laws of battle. It will be an all-out war allowing both sword and magic. He raises his hand, the air thick with anticipation, and signals the start of the clash. The announcer barely finishes introducing the three knights against Shine, Balua, and Ryan before the atmosphere explodes. With the authorization of all combat styles, the signal drops, and the opposing knights charge with earth-shaking momentum. But while the trio braces, Ryan stands like an immovable mountain, activating his signature skill, Guardian's Blessing. The knights' swords jerk violently as if seized by invisible hands, allowing Ryan to block and counter, sending two of them reeling back in shock. Shine seizes the opening, darting in with the blinding speed of a phantom to slash before his opponent can even blink. One knight tries to counter, but he finds his feet rooted to the spot. Balua has already gathered a roaring inferno in her palms and unleashes a devastating fireball, forcing the announcer to intervene. Calling for an immediate halt, he declares the duel over in a landslide victory for Ryan and his team. In the shadows, a man observes their tactics, noting that a tanker of Ryan's caliber would be a priceless asset on any battlefield. The observer's eyes narrow, acknowledging the terrifying potential of the group. The king calls the match, his voice filled with wonder as he muses aloud if this is the awakened, hidden power of the Sheridan bloodline. The Marquis stands stunned, worrying about the overwhelming strength his children possess, while the king decides Evan has the charisma of a true ruler for forging such a formidable team. However, the king questions Evan's personal combat prowess, forcing our boy to turn to the knight captain for one last favor. The princess cheers for him from the gallery, while Evan steels his resolve, knowing that retreating now would shatter his dreams of the dungeon forever. Michael steps onto the field, declaring himself the opponent. The spectators murmur, realizing this is the ultimate test of the young master's worth. The other knights whisper in fear, terrified that if they were to accidentally harm the young master, their lives would be forfeit. Lady Alicia watches with a sharp, calculating gaze as the duel commences. It is a battle of raw skill, the prodigy versus the veteran, face to face. They drop into fighting stances, the air crackling with intensity. The signal is given, and both warriors launch forward, like bullets from a gun. Michael closes the gap in a heartbeat to crush Evan, but the boy braces and counters. The captain drives a brutal knee into his side, and they exchange a flurry of rapid-fire strikes. Bernard watches from the sidelines, denying any magical artifacts are at play. This is pure, unadulterated strength. Our protagonist's movements are razor-sharp, his strikes precise and refined, overpowering the veteran. Bernard explains that while artifacts might boost stats, such exquisite technique can only be forged through blood and sweat. Mr. Ferrari gasps at the advanced martial arts, marveling that a boy of his age has mastered the way of the sword. When Alicia is asked if she fancies him, she replies without a hint of hesitation. When the topic of engagement arises, she pauses only for a heartbeat before agreeing. If he accepts, she muses, life would become truly interesting. Her father immediately promises to pull every string to ensure her proposal is accepted. Meanwhile, our boy shifts his weight, leaving a fatal opening. Michael lunges, but in a swift genius counter, Evan slams the captain to the floor and locks him down. However, the referee calls the match for Michael D. Arlock is declared the winner on technicality. Ryan kneels, asking if his master wishes to dispute the questionable outcome, but Evan humbly admits defeat. Michael rises, praising the magnificent duel and noting the terrifying rate of the boy's improvement. He advises Evan to let his body catch up to his skills. Finally, warrior respects warrior as they clasp hands, ending the bout on honorable terms. From the crowd, Mr. Ferrari burns with envy toward the Marquis for siring such monsters. He claims that even the eldest son, Eric, is a genius, Yet now another prodigy has emerged from the shadows. Mr. Ferrari notes that the Sheridan family's influence will skyrocket thanks to Evan's existence. He then turns to Crow, asking if he still considers himself a rival. Crow stiffens, a cold sweat breaking out, and admits the boy has grown into a beast far stronger than their last encounter. Even while suspecting he might lag behind in the center, Michael turned to the masses and roared. He declared Evan's performance as undeniable proof of the young master's genius. The king let out a heavy sigh, causing the room to tremble. The Marchioness intervened, saying he need not choose such a thorny path. A tense silence followed until the king finally conceded by setting a limit. Evan, you may challenge the dungeon, but only up to the 5th floor. He also warned that the 6th floor was a death trap. Evan bowed with knightly grace, swearing to conquer it and return without a scratch. But inwardly, Evan was scheming. This isn't my only shot, he thought. Next birthday, I am smashing through to the 10th floor. Count Pilati raised his goblet high. Forget these heavy matters. Tonight, we celebrate the young master's 12th birthday. Evan nodded, reaching for the wine, but Dane snatched it away with lightning speed. Absolutely no alcohol. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette emerged from the crowd. Serena approached with a dazzling smile. I'm here to keep my vow. Evan froze solid. A cold sweat broke out as she announced, I have become stronger, all thanks to your guidance. Then, she dropped the bombshell. I wish to join your dungeon knight order. Before Evan could process the shock, Alicia stepped into the fray. My, what a coincidence, she remarked with a casual air. I, too, intend to enlist. What? Evan screamed internally. The realization hit him like a truck. The 2 death flags he worked so hard to snap had returned with a vengeance. Shine slid into the scene, whispering urgently, Master, the king, the marquis, Count Pilati, and the other nobles have retreated for a private council. Needing a distraction, Evan addressed the crowd. Let's change the mood. He signaled the stage, calling forth the cute girls troupe to perform. Music filled the air. Hannah boldly asked Ryan for a dance, and he accepted with a blush. Suddenly, Servina burst in, breathless and panicked about her tardiness. After a quick change, the protagonist laughed, telling her to catch the next song. But peace was short-lived. Serena declared loud and clear, I want the first dance with Evan. Without waiting for an answer, she seized his hand and dragged him onto the floor. As they swirled to the rhythm, she teased, My, aren't you popular today? Her eyes narrowed slightly. I certainly didn't expect another high-ranking aristocrat to take interest in your little knight order. Alicia is no ordinary noble, Evan explained. She is the daughter of the Magic Kingdom's dungeon city, Pilati, and we have only met once, he added quickly. Serena waved off the excuse, her focus shifting. You're dancing. It is surprisingly good. One more round, she demanded excitedly. Before he could protest, the guests erupted into a thunderous cheer that shook the chandelier. A rugged man from the butcher shop marched out, carrying platters of sizzling skewers. Whispers spread like wildfire. Wait, aren't those the famous brothers skewers? The crowd buzzed. The Sheridans hired them? But doubt lingered in the air. Wait, isn't that made from monster meat? Is it poisoned? Is it safe? As fear spread, Evan smirked like a villain. Serena, fearless as ever, took a massive bite. Delicious. The princess stared intensely at the mysterious meat. Wow. Then chomped down. Incredible, she shouted, pointing a skewer at Evan. I want this served in the royal castle immediately. Evan grinned. Just so you know, Your Highness, that is monster meat. She froze, mid-chew. Is that taboo? She stammered. Evan stepped in smoothly. Fear not, it is perfectly safe, guaranteed by the Marquess family's honor. That was all they needed. Nobles began shouting orders while commoners surged forward. The head cook shot Evan a thumbs up, a total victory, just as the young master predicted. Evan's smirk deepened. In this world, he thought, anything is forgivable if the flavor is legendary. Impressive. A deep voice rumbled from behind. Evan turned and instantly recognized the aura. It was Genian of the Thunderbird Guild. Rare to see someone outside the dungeon explorers appreciate such delicacies, Genian mused. Evan's mind raced. This man led a guild that was small, but deadly, elite. Genian laughed off the praise. We are simply short on manpower. Evan waved his hand dismissively. Modesty doesn't suit a warrior. True, the man admitted. Our name rings loud among the veterans, even if the common folk remain oblivious. Evan cut the recruitment pitch short. 2 more skewers here. He made it crystal clear he had zero interest in being scouted. Genian leaned in, his eyes sharp. I won't give up on Ryan. Evan took a casual bite, unbothered. Is that so? Genian's expression darkened. You cannot hoard all the talented allies for yourself forever. Genian warned before vanishing into the crowd. Ruby stepped up, whispering, "Master, you were rather cold to a guildmaster." No sooner had he left than a fiery red-haired girl approached, accompanied by a man. "I am Alan," he introduced himself, "Guildmaster of the Wandering Paradise." The girl crossed her arms. "If we knew you had stepped into our world, we would have paid our respects much sooner." The protagonist's eyes flashed with recognition. Wandering Paradise, famous for their fierce loyalty and their ironclad defense of the dungeon city. But the heavy hitters kept coming. Arloa von Sorb of the Phoenix Guild appeared, flanked by Mira Weiss of the Heart Shield. "Our master is indisposed," Mira explained. Evan barely heard her. He was staring at Arloa, the legendary ice witch, who once stood shoulder to shoulder with Heart Shield's tanks. The pressure mounted as Vlad von Salta of Evergreen and Celine Anise of Megamind stepped forward. The heavyweights had arrived. Daisy tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "Your combat technique. Where is it from?" Evan didn't miss a beat. Knight Captain Michael received a divine dungeon blessing. He mastered it and passed the torch to me. Daisy pressed harder, her eyes searching for the truth. "Do you really intend to fight monsters, relying only on technique?" "That is reckless suicide." Evan chuckled, admitting the harsh reality. "You are right. Pure skill is useless inside the dungeon's depths." His expression turned serious. "I use these arts for self-defense, but I am researching a new power, a method to revolutionize the Night Order, which I plan to test with my own hands." Alan nodded slowly, impressed. The young master's vision runs deep. Aloa locked eyes with him, her voice trembling as she asked the ultimate question. Did he seek the abyss of the dungeon's end? But the commander of the Dungeon Night Order stood firm. The city's shield needs no other purpose. Clearing the path to strength and protecting the innocent is the only glory he needs. Daisy blinked, stunned by his humble lack of greed. He dismissed the suicide mission of the final floor. "What good is glory if you're dead?" Suddenly, a dark chuckle cut through the air. "At least the protagonist values survival," the voice mocked. The crowd parted, revealing a hooded figure who was none other than Prince Damien. "Damien!" Evan gasped, his composure cracking for a split second. "It is a relief," the royal sneered, stepping into the light. The prince noted that at least Evan possessed the wisdom to fear death. The crowd murmured in awe it was Prince Damien L. Silkline. Evan bowed, reciting the formal pleasantries, but Damien waved it off. "You don't look honored," he scoffed. "I'm here to give an order." He commanded Evan to protect his younger sister as fiercely as he guarded his own existence. But Evan raised a hand, stopping the royal decree cold. "You dare refuse?" The prince questioned, eyes narrowing. "Do you despise Serena that much?" "This is hardly the place for romance," Evan countered, his mind racing for an escape route. "I am to be captain of the order." He spun a tale. "A captain's wife is a prisoner of the city. Without the resolve to rot in the dungeon, she cannot be my spouse." He claimed that condemning a princess to such a fate was treasonous. But Serena wasn't listening to logic. "Then I shall join the Dungeon Night Order too," she announced, shattering his excuse instantly. Damien turned on Evan with fury. "You planted this seed in her mind, didn't you?" Evan denied it, but steel sang as the prince drew his blade. "A duel!" Damien roared. "If you fall, Serena becomes your bride," Evan protested. "But one cannot refuse a royal command twice." The sword in the prince's hand hummed with incompatible energy, weakening him. "Fine," Evan sighed. "But if I win, you will never make a request of me again," the prince agreed, offering a weapon, but our hero needed no steel. He would rely on heaven's weight, the ultimate body-strengthening art, a technique forged to withstand the fangs of hell itself. He took a stance, unarmed against royalty. The prince, however, was determined to crush this arrogance, steel against flesh. The duel for freedom began. With a roar, Damien charged, but Evan was already moving. One punch. Just one strike, and the royal collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The match ended in a blink. Evan stared at his fist in confusion. Was the prince weak, or was the weapon's debuff truly that catastrophic? Michael stepped in, analyzing the battlefield. "The heavy aura of your punch lingers," he explained. "A direct trade with heaven's weight shatters the insides." Evan insisted it was a graze, but Michael just smiled. "Your skill is simply too profound," he praised. Evan approached the fallen prince with a bit of advice. "The sword hates you," he dropped the truth bomb. "Try a hammer. Or perhaps a blunt weapon suits your style." "Why not a spear?" the prince scoffed. But Evan pressed on, warning him that forcing the wrong weapon would only destroy him. Damien pondered the wisdom, his pride bruised but his path clearer. "A sword depends on its wielder," Evan lectured. The prince agreed to the terms and departed. But Serena? She dug her heels in, refusing to leave his side. She begged for a dance, but Evan shut her down. "My feet are tired, princess." Suddenly, Alicia glided in. Serena waved goodbye, extracting a promise for later, while Alicia smirked. "You're quite the popular hero. She whispered that his popularity was annoying, but she had a solution. She intended to be his fiancée. Evan denied the possibility, claiming his father would never agree. But Alicia played her trump card. "My father will force it," she teased, hinting that the meeting of the patriarchs earlier was exactly for this reason. The memory of their fathers conspiring flashed in his mind. Oh no, the engagement trap was set. "Why me?" he panicked. "I'm just a dungeon maniac." But she simply smiled. "I've already said yes." Alicia leaned in, her presence overwhelming. "You act like you know the world's secrets, yet you tremble before me." Our boy reminded himself this was only their second meeting. He cursed his lack of poker face training. "Damn you, Shine," he thought. Alicia laughed, finding his terror absolutely adorable. "Let's see how long you can run." Realizing the danger level was critical, Evan decided to tactical retreat. No more parties. Code red. Abort mission. He tried to slip away, but another beauty intercepted him. "Dance with me." Then Servina appeared. Then Hannah. The waifu wave was endless. A crowd formed, a line of ladies waiting for a moment with the young hero. Nearby, his retainers watched the chaos. Suffering from success, one shrugged, while the other just sighed. Shine nudges Bella, suggesting she join the festivities, wondering if he needs to play wingman for her. But she shuts him down with a sharp refusal. She insists that pressuring the young master would be overstepping her boundaries. However, Shine counters that tonight is a special exception. Bella softens, confessing that simply breathing the same air as him is a blessing, and she vows to cherish every second from this moment on. Suddenly, Shine destroys the mood by shouting at the young master. Evan turns, confused, only to be told a fair maiden is waiting for an escort. Pointing an accusing finger at Bella, Shine scolds Evan for keeping a lady waiting. Our dense protagonist immediately panics and apologizes. He explains his mind was wandering, but as he looks at her, he fears he has angered her. Dropping to one knee, he addresses her with proper nobility. He looks up with a gentle gaze and asks if she will grant him the supreme honor of being her escort for the evening. She tries to decline, terrified of the status gap, but Evan commands her to forget such trivial logic for today and doubles down on his request. She points a shaking finger at him and accepts with pure joy. The crowd goes wild. Crow mutters that he would kill to have Evan's level of charm. He dreams of winning Bella's heart, but Alicia ruthlessly shuts down his delusions. Meanwhile, Bella gazes at the boy who saved her world. She calls him a noble son at the center of the universe, even though he humbly insists he is just a countryside aristocrat trying to survive. Later, the Marquis meets his son with the best birthday gift possible. He informs him that all marriage proposals have been successfully blocked. Father and son share a villainous laugh of relief, until the Marquis drops a truth bomb. The king would never hand the princess over to a dungeon maniac. His father clarifies that the king isn't worried about a normal knight, but a dungeon knight captain specifically. He explains that thanks to that reputation, they could decline without losing face. Our boy calculates the political implications. He concludes the Princess Serena crisis is averted. The Marquis adds that even if the king runs out of moves, he is stubborn, so Evan must remain vigilant. Evan quietly prays to the gods that a better suitor appears for the princess soon. But his father suddenly shifts the conversation. He mentions that while some things are good, Count Ferretti's daughter has made a chaotic choice. Evan listens as the Marquis drops the news. The Count wants to place his daughter in the Dungeon Knight Squad as a reserve member. The nightmare isn't over. Hearing this betrayal makes the boy scream in pure agony. The Marquis sadistically adds that if she suffers in the trenches for a while, she might eventually evolve into a permanent member. He implies that once she's in, there is no escaping this destiny. He points out the Dungeon City's military power is skyrocketing, a fact that can no longer be ignored by the nobility. The Marquis mentions the fancy uniforms given to the children as a trap. He challenges his son, after coming this far, will he abandon his squad now? Then, his voice drops an octave, demanding to know the real reason behind Evan's behavior. He asks why his son is so terrified of women. After a heavy silence, our boy admits he fears keeping anyone close because they are variables he cannot control. He worries about being destroyed by hidden agendas and asks if that makes him a coward. The Marquis shakes his head, saying he isn't stupid, just terrifyingly mature for his age, but he warns that isolating himself is not the answer, adding that even crashing and burning is part of growth, though he respects his son's survival instincts. The Marquis explains that true wisdom is forged in the fire of experience, and even failure is a necessary teacher. He urges Evan to reflect on his own heart and the people around him, using every outcome to level up. Evan nods in agreement, though internally, he admits his only goal is avoiding girls to dodge the deadly game over flags he remembers. Finally, the Marquis wishes him a happy 12th birthday. Back in his room, Evan surveys his loot. He inspects the crates of blue-capped potions, calculating that the inventory is finally sufficient. Just as he finishes, Bernard enters, scolding him for not resting. Evan explains that urgent business kept him up last night. He plans to sleep now, but before he can move, a mystic blue light pulses from his chest. He pulls out Mirasol's necklace, which is now blazing with mana and shifting form. At that exact moment, the door is kicked open, and Princess Serena invades the room. Ignoring his father's warning about boundaries, she storms in, announcing that a new life is about to enter the world. She claims the summon for herself, stepping closer with intense eyes, insisting the entity is ready to manifest right now. Evan looks at the vibrating necklace, realizing the omen. Serena, clutching her red slime ruby, explains that her pet heard the call of a new arrival. Evan scolds her for the break-in, and she casually agrees, but her eyes remain glued to the summoning. Evan focuses on the necklace as blinding light explodes from the pendant, beginning the ritual. Pure energy spirals outward, condensing into a small jelly-like blue shape. An ice slime has been born. He notes that it manifested by its own will. Serena immediately extends her hands, and the creature happily settles into her grasp. She thanks the little blob for existing, christens it Lucy, and places it alongside Ruby. The next morning, the grind continues as Evan meets Bernard. He reveals a tray of glowing red orbs, introducing them as battle beads. Bernard stares, completely caught off guard. Evan explains that since his gloves cancel out weapon skills, he had to improvise a new way to fight. Why settle for a generic sword when you can abuse game mechanics? These orbs hit like a truck, especially with the gloves' insane reinforcement buff stacking on top. It was the ultimate strategy for a coward, a tactician, maximum range and total safety, while the chemical alchemy ensured his gear would only get more broken and overpowered over time. They were the perfect weapons for his survival-obsessed lifestyle. Bernard gave him one final piece of advice: if the situation gets hairy, don't hesitate to spam attacks. Stepping outside, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation as the raid party gathered. Amidst the crowd, Evan spotted a towering presence his father had come to see the departure. The Count looked completely blindsided. "You're entering the dungeon? Already?" Panic flickered in his eyes as he grilled Evan, desperate to know if his son had lost his mind. Evan stood his ground, radiating unshakable confidence. His father still looked ready to forbid it, but the Countess stepped in, silencing the room with her absolute faith in her boy. Defeated by his wife and son's determination, the Count finally crumbled. "Just come back alive," he grumbled. Evan gave a solemn nod. Dying wasn't part of the plan. Shifting his focus to the mission, Evan scanned his squad. Ryan, Balua, and Shine, the Dream Team, was locked, loaded, and ready to make history.